All right, I'd like to call this meeting to order for the Corporation of Township of Puslinch on January 19th, 2022. Roll call. Councillor Sapoulis.
Present.
Councillor Bailey.
Present.
Councillor Bulmer.
Here.
And Councillor Goyda.
Present.
Excellent. And now we'll start our moment of reflection. Okay, and that concludes our moment of reflection. Mr. Fox, could I have you read the resolution for confirmation of the agenda, please?
The council approves the January 19th, 2022 agenda as circulated, and the council approves the additions to the agenda as follows. Consent agenda item 6.1.2, questions received from council seeking additional information and the corresponding responses provided by staff regarding the January 19th, 2022 council agenda items, and correspondence item 10.3, Wellington Roadmaster Action Plan, final report presentation from the Roads Committee meeting.
Excellent. Can I get a mover for that, please? Councillor Sapoulis, seconder. Councillor Bailey, any questions or comments on that before we vote? Okay, all in favor? Councillor Sapoulis.
Favor.
Councillor Bailey.
Favor.
Councillor Bulmer.
In favor.
And Councillor Goyda.
In favor.
Excellent. Do we have any disclosure of pecuniary interest today?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Councillor Bulmer.
Item 937, the communications policy. The report seeks the approval of a list of specific publications, which is not a, which would not be a policy of general application to a broad class of publications. And since a family member is a volunteer member of the board of the Puslinch Pioneer, which is one of the publications on that list. So thank you.
Councillor Bulmer, if we have the clerks remove that specific publication from the discussion, would that satisfy your needs for your conflict of interest?
Not necessarily, because then it could be seen, if I made comments regarding any of the other publications, it could be seen as, you know, so I think I would prefer just to excuse myself from the, because it's a list of specific publications. If it were just a general policy we're discussing, I don't think I'd have the problem, but as long as we're discussing specific publications, I think I should just excuse myself. So, thank you.
Mr. Swenier or Ms. White Fox, this essentially is going to build a policy for the media that we use, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Don't want to delay this, but if we removed all of the items, the publications, and just had them brought back another time so Councillor Bulmer could participate, would that delay this to a detriment?
Well, if you would remove them and still approve the policy, then there wouldn't be anything listed in the policy. So how would it get implemented?
Okay, sorry. All right, Councillor Bulmer, we'll have to participate without you. All right, so there's that. Just like to have everybody in, as you all know. All right, consent agenda resolution.
That the consent agenda items listed for the January 19th, 2022 council meeting be received for information.
Can I get a mover for that? Councillor Goyda, seconded by Councillor Bailey. Oh. All right, well, then we'll have some discussion. Councillor Bulmer, you had an item?
Yeah, I was a little lost there for a second. I think I'll wait till it's my turn.
Okay, sorry. Okay, do we have our delegate available, Ms. White Fox?
Mr. Mayor, I don't see him logged in yet.
Okay, all right, well, I'm going to carry on for a little bit, so we'll see if there's any removals. Councillor Sapoulis.
Yes, items 618, 619, and 621.
You, Counselor Bailey,
Nope, none for me.
Counselor Balmer,
I'd like the one removed regarding the Mill Creek aggregates. I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with the number.
to pull it up. Ms. White Fox, can you help me out?
6.7, I think it is.
Yes, correct. 6-7.
Okay.
All right, and Counselor Goida.
No, I'm good, thanks.
Okay, Counselor Balmer, or sorry, hold on. We're gonna receive the other items, and then we'll deal with those four. So all in favor of receiving those other items other than 618, 619, 621, and 67? Counselor Spills,
In favor?
Counselor Bailey,
Favor.
Counselor Balmer,
In favor.
and Counselor Goida.
In favor.
All right, Counselor Balmer, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I noted that there was one little comment in this report and regarding changes that were made to a silt barrier. And I'm concerned that this may not have received the attention, the due attention. It didn't indicate that this was, site plans had been modified to address this. How this passive water movement was done, was it just a guy in a backhoe knocking a hole in the silt barrier? Was it done with some engineering standards? Was there some hydrogeology taken into account here? There's lots of questions around this. And I recognize that this, Mr. Denhode, our Hardin Environmental, will be reviewing this as part of his annual review. I just thought at this point, it might be beneficial for the municipality to write a letter to the operator and CC it to Mr. Denhode regarding asking a question. Did they, get all these appropriate approvals for this change to the silt barrier? And just to bring it to Hardin Environmental's attention when he does his year-end review, that this change has been made since he identified concerns in his last year's review, annual review regarding water levels in Pond 3. And I don't believe that knocking a hole in the silt barrier was one of the recommended options to address his concerns. So as typically we always tell residents, start with the operator. I think we should do the same. If we could have staff write a letter to the operator asking, did this change the silt barrier get the blessing of the ministry? And CC that to Mr. Denhode so it's highlighted for him in his annual review. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a mover. I'll take a seconder for that, please. Counselor Spillis, discussion, Counselor Spillis.
No, I agree with Councillor Bulmer's take on this. It's important to understand the engineering lack of that went into this, and clue in our consultant that this is coming down the pike, and he should have a more in-depth look on this.
Thank you. Counselor Bailey.
No, I tend to support sending a letter and getting some questions. So that's all.
Okay. Counselor Balmer, any further comments?
No, thank you.
Okay. Counselor Goida.
Yeah, I think that's a good catch, and I agree with the approach that Councillor Balmer is suggesting of sending a letter and copying the consultant. I think that's the right way to go about doing it, so I would support that.
Yeah, I agree with that. My first instinct was just to have Mr. Denhode review it. He treats the township very well, and his costs are very nominal, I feel. And but then I agree with Councillor Balmer's statement that we prefer to approach the operator first and get some clarity, and then see Mr. Denhode. That's an excellent approach. So, Ms. White Fox, do you have that captured in the resolution?
Yes, so just to receive consent agenda item 6.7. And whereas Coastal Council has concerns relating to the changes to the site plan, specifically the silt barrier, that council forward the concerns to the operator and copy the township's consultant, Hardin Environmental, on the correspondence. Do
we need to include in the wording, Councillor Balmer, requesting whether there was engineering, wordsmith this a little bit? I want to be a little bit more specific with the operator.
Well, I trust staff, having heard the discussion,
Okay.
Can include that in the letter without it being in the resolution.
Okay. All right. So we had a mover and a seconder for that. All in favor, Councillor Spillis?
In favor.
Councillor Bailey? I saw you say in favor. I didn't hear it, but Councillor Balmer
In favor.
and Councillor Goida.
In favor.
All right, that's carried. Now the floor is yours, Councillor Spoulos.
Yes, 6.18 and 6.19 are very similar in nature in that on 6.18, our chair of the Pusson's High Speed Initiative Committee has written to our MP requesting, in essence, when are we going to know about the UBF funding? And it's a concern that the community is underserved and waiting. 6.19 is one to our MPP, basically saying, look, we are hearing through the grapevine that the reverse auction, which was to include Puss Lynch, may not be including Puss Lynch, and we're asking to clarify this for us. Again, we don't want to be left out on both of them. It could be that one's committing, UBF is committing to do it, but we don't know that for sure because there's been no announcements. And the province is saying, well, UBF is up to them. So our chair has written to them, and I'd like to ask that the council and write to both our MP and MPP in support of their respective letters, asking, saying that we support the letters written by the chair of the Puss High Speed Initiative Committee, and that we would be appreciative of any response given to the chair that we received one likewise.
Okay, so I'll take that as a moved motion. Can I get a seconder for that, please?
Second that.
Okay, Councillor Balmer. Okay, discussion. Councillor Bailey.
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion. It's a proactive communication, win. I think the group is doing a lot of work on our behalf, and I think any support we should be showing. So yeah, I'm all for that.
Okay. Councillor Balmer.
Thank you. Yes, I support this. It's a good example of how these ad hoc committees that are supported by council but driven by the community's continued awareness and following of these issues can be a benefit to the entire community. So good work on by this committee. Thank you, Councillor Spoulos, for bringing it to our attention, and please thank Mr. James for the work. So yeah, I support it.
Councillor Goyda.
Thank you. Yeah, I echo the same sentiments as Councillor Balmer and Councillor Bailey. I really appreciate all the work and effort that the High Speed Committee is putting into this, and I would support writing these letters, wholeheartedly. So thank you again.
Yeah, excellent work. Ms. White-Fox, any clarity on the resolution?
No, thank you. I have the resolution with the mover, Councillor Spoulos, and a seconder, Councillor Balmer, for item 618. And I believe item 619 will look similar. And so I have that drafted as well once we have that on the floor.
Okay, so all in favor of 618, Councillor Spoulos?
In favor?
Councillor Goyda?
In favor.
Councillor Balmer?
In favor.
Councillor Goyda?
In favor.
You went out of turn for once. I didn't mess that up. It's me. All right, 619, Ms. White-Fox, do you have a resolution for that one? Is it similar?
Yes, so it's that 619 be received. And whereas Puss Lynch Council supports the letters written by the Puss Lynch High Speed Initiative Committee regarding Infrastructure Ontario reverse auction, that council directs staff to forward a support resolution to Honorable Ted or not.
All right, mover, please. Councillor Spoulos, seconded by Councillor Goyda. All in favor? Councillor Spoulos?
In favor?
Councillor Bailey?
Favor.
Councillor Balmer?
In favor.
And Councillor Goyda.
In favor.
All right, Councillor Spoulos, 6.20.
6.21, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, sorry, my mistake.
Yeah, this ERO is put forward to propose to permit the importation of fill material into gravel pits, whether they're future, existing, or to be closed out. And I think we need a review of it to make sure that, especially for live gravel pits, that the appropriate soil conditions, soil nature are met. Now, a particular concern is the gravel pit on Wellington Road 34. We've had complaints from area residents that they have heard fill material being brought in. I know that the staff are working on this file, and it's due to a complaint. They can't divulge too much, but I think it's important that we do have experts look at this and give us comments to forward to the ministry. I'd just like to ask one question of the CAO. What is his opinion of asking for a learned opinion to learned consultants to look at this, and what type of consultants would he propose?
I think that this is a very good idea. I would suggest, excuse me, that we would involve our hydrogeologist for sure. And then from the environmental perspective, we could get our township engineer, whether it's GM Blue Plan or possibly one of the ecologist firms that does a lot of aggregate work as well, to comment on it from that perspective. I think that would be definitely beneficial.
Okay, so
And we could also utilize that information too then towards the site alteration bylaw the council is currently working on.
Okay, so Mr. Mayor, my motion would be that staff engage GM Blue Plan and Hard Environmental to review the proposed regulation and provide comments to us to forward to the ministry as part of our comments.
Thank you, Councillor Spillis. I did go and read the ERO, but I do not remember the deadline for comments. Does anybody have that information?
It's the end of February, Mr. Mayor. Should there be an opportunity to have a comment before that?
So we don't need to put in the resolution that we want to see this or have the consultants engaged on a certain timeline?
I would
Yes,
assume
good.
our CIO would know that there's a timeline associated and there's a council meeting we need to propose it.
Okay. All right, we have the resolution moved by Councillor Spillis. Can I get a seconder for that, please? Councillor Bailey? Councillor Bailey, comments?
No, full agreement. I think it's a great idea. I agree that it would help us guide our site alteration bylaw as well. Some of the wording maybe. I'm just curious about budget, making sure that this fits within budget and where that fits.
Mr. CAO?
Two points, if I could. In terms of the budget, what we would do, this wouldn't be a large dollar item. What I would suggest is that we would just bring this back to council with the information with some recommended options for funding at that time. So I wouldn't have too much concern about that. What I would suggest though is just I'd want to review this a little bit in more detail to see exactly which consultants we might do. I know it was mentioned the township engineer GM Blue Plan, but perhaps one of our ecologist firms might be better suited. I don't know. So instead of having the resolution that specific, could we simply say that the township's consultants, and then we'll figure that out and bring that information back to you. That's just our suggestion.
Comfortable with that, Councillor Spillis?
Absolutely.
I believe it was seconded by Councillor Bailey.
Yep.
Comfortable with that alteration? Okay. Councillor Balmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Councillor Spoulis. Yeah, I also read the ERO posting, and I must admit, on first review, it seemed like this might be improving things, considering that aggregate operations are already bringing in material for rehabilitation on a regular basis, and this may be bringing some standards to that may not exist depending on the age of the site plan, that may not have had any stipulations. But that's an assumption on my part, and I never like to move ahead on those kind of assumptions. So I think it's a good idea to have somebody who perhaps looks at these things more often than we do look at it. One friendly amendment, if I could, Councillor Spoulis, you've included in the resolution sharing it with the Ministry of Natural Resources, which I think is a great idea. But if we're talking about who to share it with, I think I'd also like to share it with AMO when it comes back. We can always decide that at a later date, but I think I hope to see something from AMO on this as well. But I think getting it in their hands to share with other municipalities and perhaps with TAPMO as well would be beneficial. So we can leave those to later, but I certainly like to consider that we're preparing this for those two other organizations as well.
Don't forget Roma.
Yeah, so I thought of Roma first, but I realized they get a lot of their policy support, I believe, through AMO.
So are you
Yes.
amending his resolution, or are you comfortable just waiting?
No,
till
I
he's-
think I'm maybe just bringing it on, putting it on the table for discussion, maybe down the road, just making them aware that I'd like to have this with an eye to sharing it with those additional organizations as well. And it's not just the ministry we want to share our comments with, but others as well. So,
Councillor Goida?
Yes, I agree. I think it's a great idea and I support it.
Thanks, Councillor Goida. When I read the RO, I thought similarly to Councillor Balmer, well, maybe this is where we want Phil to go, is into these, exhausted aggregate pits, if there is such a thing. And I thought it could be a good thing, but we don't know, and I didn't want to make assumptions either. So I'd prefer to have it in an industrial use that's coming to fruition versus somebody buying a 100-acre farm and building a giant mound. I guess we'll see what the consultants say, but I think it's a brilliant idea. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, Councillor Spoulos,
In favor.
Councillor Bailey,
Favor?
Councillor Balmer,
in favor.
and Councillor Goida.
In favor.
Let's move. All right, so now we'll move on to our delegation. Ask Ms. White Fox to move Mr. Gauthier over.
Good morning.
Welcome. Good morning.
Thank you for having me, inviting me to make this presentation on the Year of the Garden. Let me share the screen here, I think. Am I okay? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
So I'll just say, Mr. Gauthier, that I wouldn't go line by line through your presentation, but
No, simply, yes, I'll just go through it.
thank
Okay.
you.
So thank you for the opportunity to talk about the Year of the Garden and our invitation to municipalities to proclaim 2022 the Year of the Garden. So 2022, why 2022? It's the centennial of the ornamental horticultural sector and marked by the 100th anniversary of the Canadian Nursery Landscape Association. And we have three main goals, and that is to celebrate our horticultural and garden heritage, and to celebrate our vibrant garden culture, and to create legacies. And our slogan for the Year of the Garden is live the garden life, vive la vie de jardin. We feel that that's the great life to live. And I think the pandemic has shown us how people, I'm sure in your community also have turned to gardening and garden, and certainly your garden community has been very active. And so just to tell you that we at the Canadian Garden Council, supported by Canada's Garden Family, proclaim 2022 the Year of the Garden in March, and in June the federal government acknowledged it through a declaration in the House of Commons, and are being very supportive and collaborative in doing this. And so the Year of the Garden is not about creating a big event. The Year of the Garden is about promoting everything that's happening in our communities, in your community, with the gardeners there and the garden organization and the master gardeners. And this is about promoting and profiling all the good work that's being done, and with the garden family. So the industry part of it, yes, the producers, the services, and the people that provide the experience. And so we want to celebrate all the good things happening in your community. And so these are the founding partners of this. And so our invitation to you, Bushland, is to proclaim 2022 the Year of the Garden, committing to being a garden-friendly city, and to celebrate National Garden Day, which is the Saturday before Father's Day. And so this is not like we're asking you to make a financial contribution. We're asking you to engage with your garden culture, your garden community, and to celebrate this. And we will put out invitations out there that can be shared with your citizens, like signing up their garden as a celebration garden, like planting red, like being a garden volunteer. by celebrating your garden heroes, discovering their garden heritage. We will put out a weekly therapeutic garden invitation that can be shared with everyone. Maybe you want to raise the flag at City Hall, the Year of the Garden flag. We will have a Live the Garden Life agenda, so some of the activities in your communities can be included. I'm not sure if you have an official flower or plant. If you do, let's celebrate it. If not, maybe this is the time to dedicate an official flower or plant for your community. And yes, we have a few legacy goals here, like a garden for every school and a garden hall of fame. So live the garden life. There will be an agenda. We want your community. We'd love to have your community as part of that. And certainly it looks like your garden community is ready to engage with this. So our invitation is simple. Join the celebration. Join the Year of the Garden. Proclaim 2022 the Year of the Garden, and invite all your citizens to live the garden life in 2022. Thank you.
Perfect.
Any
Thank you, Mr.
questions?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Gauthier. Councillor Spoils.
Yes, so Mr. Gauthier, I don't have any specific questions of you. I thank you for your work on this and bringing it to a national, giving it the national exposure. I just have a question for our CAO on process. Mr. Swindiger, do we have a policy that deals with proclamation of days or years, particularly year for events?
Offhand, I'm not aware, no, but I want to double check that to make sure, but offhand, I don't think we do know.
Yeah, I guess my concern is that, it's proclaimed already by the federal government. Do we as a municipality have to do it? I look at a holiday, you got the various provincial and various federal holidays. We don't restate them again. And I look at this, it's already endorsed by the government of Canada. And do we need to do this as a community? And I understand the good work that they're doing, and certainly I would support any liaison with the this Canadian Garden Council with the interested groups in our area. But I really have a concern about opening up the door, so to speak, to have somebody say, I want this day to be this day, and this day to be that day, this day to be that day, this year to be this year. And in the absence of a policy, I really have difficulty with proclaiming this. Those are my comments, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Spoils. Councillor Bailey.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gauthier, for coming today. I was approached earlier on by Sharon, who is a resident of Puslinch, who asked, sort of asked about being able to help engage with this initiative. And I don't know if we need to make it such a formal event. I see it as a way of recognizing that this is happening. It's happening at a national level. It's happening, within Ontario. And we can just bring it to the level that we want to use it for. So I kind of see it as a way of recognizing what's happening and seeing a partnership and being able to promote what is already happening within the township. And just on that note, so myself and a friend started up a garden gnomes group last year, mostly during COVID, just a way to give back to the community. And it started out in the Millennial Garden, and we've just been weeding and adding in a few plants where needed. And we've had a few other residents wanting to engage. Actually, the one day I walked by and one of the residents was in there helping. So I think it's really good timing that this is coming up, and it's a way that maybe we can partner just to promote, to encourage people to come out, to engage. One of the first topics we talked about at Safe Communities was mental health and how trees and gardens and stuff can be helpful. So maybe there's a way to link it all through. So I don't have any questions, but I just think this is a really great way to help promote and see what's already happening within the township and bringing it forward for recognition.
Oh, there he is.
Yes, sorry, I just realized I didn't have my camera. Yes, very true. And I think, this is meant to do that, is acknowledge all the benefits and what gardens and gardening do for our community. And I think, most of the communities we've gone to are proclaiming, some have a specific policy that they do not proclaim and therefore have declared, recognize in an official capacity. And so we just, if that's your choice, that's okay. And we can acknowledge that. We do want to, identify communities, municipalities across the country that are going to do this. And so we'd love to acknowledge yours. And yes, in support of all of your, and I heard you about the Millennium Garden. Well, we do have Canada's Garden Route. So you might want to consider putting your garden on Canada's Garden Route as a way of celebrating everything you have in your community also.
Councillor Balmer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much for bringing this to our attention. It's perfect timing, as has been said before, even for your garden day or day of the garden. Our local farmers market for several years now, well, before the pandemic and hopefully post-pandemic, they would position themselves the first 2 days of the season, which would be early June or very late May. They positioned it as, they called it garden days, where they promoted the sale of garden plants. The farmers were there selling other things, and why not sell their plants, bedding plants, vegetable plants, flowers. So it's a perfect fit. And so I was wondering, do you do any outreach with not-for-profits, or if we put you in touch with our local farmers market group, is there anything you could provide in terms of supporting them in their endeavors to promote gardens as well?
Definitely, we have all kinds of tools, and we invite all not-for-profit to use the Year of the Garden image and to connect to the various promotions. And we do have garden days. The national day is part of a garden days program. So yes, we have a website that they can go to. They can sign up. We have a garden family newsletter that we call, and that will keep them informed and of everything that's available. So yes, you can provide that to me, and I will connect them to the Year of the Garden.
Thank you so much. Then I have a question for staff then, I guess, would be recognizing Councillor Sepoulis' concern, but also recognizing that we now have a communications and media policy for sharing information that we might receive, and the delegation has indicated that they might be sending us information. Would it be appropriate today to have a perhaps approve, since that policy has a list of approved things that are, can be retweeted or shared? Could we at least acknowledge that this is a group that if we receive anything about it this year, we can add it to the list for our social media platforms? Is that possible?
Yeah, sure. We could definitely include that if council chooses to do so.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
Councillor Balmer, what are your thoughts if they liaise with the farmers market or one of the other existing, and it comes through those groups?
Yes, it could, and they could be the promoters of it. I mean, that's what I was just trying to get my head around the whole thing, what's possible, what's not, and we don't have to do any of it today. But I'm just trying to think see what's possible. So thank you.
Councillor Goyder? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, I'm talking away and no one can hear me. Thank you so much for coming to present today and bringing this to our attention. It's new to me, so I wouldn't have known about it without your presentation, so thank you. I do agree that I think that the timing of it is quite good, especially given the pandemic, and I appreciate Councillor Bailey's comment about, especially during this time, how gardens and plants and all that those kinds of things are a real help with mental health. So I think that is a really good fit. And I too was wondering, it sounds like you already have various content and things that you're able to provide that could be shared to promote the Year of the Garden. And I had a similar thought to Councillor Balmer is, is that, I think it would be a good idea to just use that content and share it on our own Engage Plus Lynch, our website, things like that to promote the Year of the Garden. And if we were able to add that to our social media policy, I think that would be a great approach. And that's really it.
Okay, thank you. Well, Mr. Gochi, it sounds like, staff has to go back and look at, the proclamation and possibly develop a
Okay.
policy. However, I feel that Councillor Bailey will liaise with you and the garden gnomes, and Councillor Bulmer will connect you with the Aberfoyle Farmers Market.
Mhm.
And then we can at least, once we get this social media and our policy in place, we'll get some promotion through it while we digest whether we need a policy for proclamation or not.
Yes,
So I appreciate your
definitely.
time and-
Yeah, if you can, we can have a contact, we can go back and forth, put you on our list of information, and I invite you to look at, what you can do. I don't know if you have an official flower or an official plant in your community, but, to create something that will kind of be, telling all your citizens that you are celebrating the Year of the Garden. And I understand it's been proclaimed there, but it's a way of making sure that your citizens are engaged and they know. And so by doing something that will remain, and yes, we invite you to raise the Year of the Garden flag at City Hall and do that type of thing. So I think your garden community would appreciate and be very supportive. Thank you for the opportunity.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for coming today.
Thank you.
Ms. Whitefox, you have a resolution?
The council receives a delegation by Michael Gauthier regarding Year of the Garden 2022 celebrations and proclamation for information.
Thank you. Can I get a move for that, please? Councillor Spools. Oh, we lose you? You lose me?
You lose you, yeah.
Am I back?
Yep, you're back.
All in favor? Councillor Spools?
Favor.
Councillor Bailey?
Favor.
Councillor Bulmer?
In favor.
Mr. Goida?
In favor.
Great. We're on to public information meeting. Let me find it. All right, we have a public information meeting, January 19th, 2022, held by electronic participation at 7 p.m. regarding the following: 2022 budget public information meeting. So that's tonight. So look forward to seeing everyone there. 7 p.m. if I didn't say it. Next, reports. None. All right, Ms. Hassan, are you ready? Get the right report up. All right, first one we're going to deal with is finance 2022-003. Ms. Hassan.
So council, this is just an annual report that's required in order to bill the interim tax levy for 2022. And there's also a bylaw included on the council agenda to be passed today. I'd welcome any questions from council.
Ms. Whitefox, can we have that resolution read, please?
Report FIN-2022-003 regarding the 2022 interim property tax levy and due dates be received, and that council give 3 readings to bylaw number 2022-003, being a bylaw to provide for the levy and collection of the 2022 interim tax levy.
And mover for that, please. Councillor Goida, seconded by Councillor Bailey. Comments, Councillor Spillis?
No comments. Thank you very much for the report.
Okay, Councillor Bailey,
Comments.
Councillor Bulmer,
No comments.
Councillor Goida,
No comments.
all in favor, Councillor Spillis,
In favor.
Councillor Bailey,
Favor.
Councillor Bulmer,
In favor.
Councillor Goida.
Favor.
All right, next one, Ms. Whitefox. Actually, I'll have Ms. Whitefox read the resolution, please, for report finance 2022-004.
That report FIN 2022-004 regarding the cancellation, reduction, or refund of taxes through sections 357, 358 be received. And the council authorizes the treasurer through sections 357, 358 of the Municipal Act to process the cancellation, reduction, or refunds of property taxes for certain properties in the amount of $27,015 for the year 2020 as outlined in Schedule A.
Are you gonna move for that, please? Councillor Spoil, seconded by Councillor Ballmer. Yes, he's smiling, he's on. Ms. Hassan, anything to add?
Nothing to add. This is further to a report provided in late 2021 regarding Section 358 applications received for this property for 3 years. So the 2020 Section 357 application, based on our discussions with MTAG, should be processed and evaluated by Township Council. So I'd welcome any questions from council. John Ines is also in the gallery should council have any questions from the Municipal Tax Advisory Group related to this report.
Does council have any questions regarding that report? Because I'll have them moved over before I see any. Okay, all right, so we have a mover and seconder, all in favor. Councillor Spoulos,
In favor.
Councillor Bailey,
Favor.
Councillor Ballmer,
In favor?
Councillor Goyda.
In favor.
Excellent. Now, Ms. Whitefox, can you read the resolution for Finance Report 2022-005, please?
That report FIN 2022-005 regarding the 2022 municipal insurance renewal be received, and that council authorize the renewal of the municipal insurance coverage and service contract to Marsh Canada Limited for the policy term January 1st, 2022 to January 1st, 2023, as outlined in the insurance proposal attached as Schedule A to report FIN 2022-005.
Thank you. Mover, please. Councillor Spoulos, second by Councillor Goyda. Ms. Hassan.
So council will note that there has been a significant increase in insurance premiums as per the 2022 quote received from Marsh. This is a common trend, unfortunately, within municipalities, but Marsh is also here to discuss their renewal report and answer any questions from council.
Okay, council, do you have questions for the insurance provider? That's okay. Thank you, Ms. Hassan. Councillor Spoulos, all in favor?
In favor.
Councillor Bailey?
Favor.
Councillor Ballmer?
In favor?
Councillor Goyda.
In favor.
Thank you, that's carried. We're still well below the 2020 quote that we received from our previous provider, so we're doing better, but it's just a big increase, unfortunately. All right, next report is our deputy clerk. Can I get Ms. Whitefox to read the resolution for 2022-002?
Certainly, so it's a little bit more lengthy with this one, but it's that council received report ADM 2022-002 regarding the Howard Memorial Cemetery land acquisition, and that council directs staff as follows. So to proceed with the transfer ownership of the Howard Memorial Cemetery from the Western Ontario Waterways Regional Council to the township based on the following conditions: that the cemetery land be conveyed to the township for nominal consideration, that the land be conveyed to the township is to be free and clear of any encumbrances, and that both the township and the current owner of the cemetery lands shall each be responsible for its own costs for retaining its solicitors to enact the registration of the transfer deed of land in the land registry office and any associated expenses with the finalization of the transfer of land, and that council pass the attached bylaw to authorize the execution of the agreement of the purchase and sale for the transfer of Part Lot 10 Concession 4 by the mayor and clerk for nominal consideration.
Okay, can I have a mover for that, please? Councillor Spoulos, seconded by Councillor Bailey. Comments, Councillor Spoulos?
No, I have no comments. I'm in full support of the staff's recommendations.
Okay, you're in favor. That's Councillor Bailey,
No comments, and I am in favor.
Councillor Ballmer,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I'm in favor as well. I would like to propose one small friendly amendment to the resolution that would have this report shared with the Heritage Committee, just so they're brought up to speed as well, since this is a property that has come up with discussions with the Heritage Committee, and just make sure they're kept aware of the goings on of these properties, if that can be done.
That should be fine. Right, Councillor, and you're in favor then, you said? Councillor
Yes.
Goyda?
I have no questions and I'm in favor. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay. We have ADM 2022-003 bylaw enforcement occurrences. Do we have Ivan here today? Or is it Jeff Bunn, Mr. Bunn again?
That would be myself, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. I'll get Ms. White Fox to read the resolution first.
That report ADM 2022-003 regarding the fourth quarter 2021 bylaw enforcement update be received for information.
I'm going to move her for that, please. Councillor Spools, seconded by Councillor Goyda. And Mr. Bunn, anything to add? A little synopsis?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. So this report is to report on the fourth quarter bylaw enforcement activity that's taken place. And I believe as part of council questions, there was also a question in terms of the yearly totals, particularly related to outstanding files that have been opened. So that's been provided as well. But I'm happy to answer any questions if there's anything on the report.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, Councillor Spools?
I don't have any questions. I was appreciative of knowing where we stand on the outstanding ones, what categories they were, and I can see that the site alteration is the predominant one on the outstanding ones, and I'm looking forward to have a permanent bylaw enforcement officer help us whittle this list down rather than continue growing every year.
Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, thank you. No questions, but good comments there.
Councillor Ballmer?
No questions.
Councillor Goyda?
I have no questions. Thanks.
Neither do I. All right, excellent. That's carried. All in favor, I guess. Did I actually call the vote? Councillor Spools in favor?
Sure.
Councillor Bailey? In favor?
Yep.
Councillor Bailey? Yep. Councillor Ballmer?
In favor.
Goyda?
In favor.
All right, next one, ADM 2022-004. This is Ms. White Fox. Can you read the resolution, please?
That report ADM 2022-004 regarding the 2021 annual water report for drinking water system number 2600210034 be received, and that the 2021 annual water report be submitted to the ministry and the applicable agencies as outlined in the report.
Can you move for that, please? Councillor Spools, second by Councillor Bailey. Anything further to add, Ms. White Fox, your report?
Nothing further to the responses that were provided to council as part of the addition to the consent items, but both Mr. Fowler and I are here if there are any additional questions that we can help with.
Councillor Spools?
I have no questions. I'm in favor of the report.
Councillor Bailey?
No questions and in favor.
Councillor Ballmer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I was pleased to see that there were some questions from council on this report. I can remember when I first attended, I think it was the first risk management course we had to take under the Clean Water Act, and it was, even though we don't have a full municipal system, we were required to go and take the risk management training, and it was drilled into our heads how important it is that members of council read these reports, since we are the ones that are ultimately responsible. And so I was glad to see that other members of council are reading this, as it matters to our community who rely on the water being safe in those facilities. So thank you very much.
You're in favor?
Oh, yes, thank you.
Councillor Goyda?
I did just have one question. I know that the question was posed in the addition to the agenda, the questions and answers. But I'm just curious, the sodium is showing, it is an exceedance, but it doesn't show that it is. And I'm just wondering why it doesn't get marked as an exceedance if it is in fact not within the parameters.
Mr. Fowler, or who answers that one?
I could speak to that one if you like. Given the parameter that it is, it has been identified across the province as a naturally occurring element in many locations. So because it isn't a direct health impact like that, and it can be a naturally occurring element, what the approach has been is to just notify it, post it, notify the health unit, and then that is sufficient. Just that it's not an immediate health concern, which is why it isn't typically listed.
Okay, no, that makes sense. Okay, thank you.
And you're in favor, Councillor Goyda?
Yes, I'm sorry, I'm in favor.
Excellent. All right, Ms. White Fox, you have a resolution for ADM 2022-005.
Yes, so that report ADM 2022-005 regarding the application of the Line Fences Act update be received. And then we're looking for a little bit of direction from council based on the report.
Okay, can I get a mover for that, please? Councillor Spillis, seconded by Councillor Balmer. Excellent. All right, Councillor Spillis.
Yes, I'm in favor of taking on 4 fence reviewers for this year and the next 5 years, and then proceeding, having 3 PDAC members in the next term of council trained up to be available for filling in the gap.
Great. Councillor Bailey.
Yeah, I thought it was a great suggestion in the report. I am in favor as well. Sounds like a good plan.
Councillor Balmer.
Great suggestions. I'm fully supportive of the continued use of the Line Fences Act. Thank you very much to staff for all their hard work, and council for, also being willing to get behind the alternative when that was thought to be the right way to go as well. I thought everybody did a good job in trying to get the best result possible. So thank you, and I'm in favor.
Councillor Goyda.
I am also in favor. Great work. Thank you.
Excellent work. So that's carried. You don't need further direction on that one, Ms. White Fox?
No, thank you. I've just included that council approved staff's recommendations as outlined in the report.
All right, next one is ADM 2022-007, proposed corporate work plan. Ms. White Fox?
The report ADM 2022-007 regarding the proposed 2022 corporate work plan be received, and that Township of Whistler Council directs staff to proceed with finalizing the document either as presented or amended and report back.
Can I get a mover for that, please? Councillor Spillis, second by Councillor Goyda. Comments? Councillor Spillis?
Yes, I'm glad that there was a clarification what the end bar means for all these bylaws. In other words, it's the staff have completed their process and it goes on into the public realm after that. Unlike other things, like you got the kitchen renovation, well, that's a finite completion of that activity. So that helps me out a lot. I don't have any questions or comments with respect to the other elements of it and the timing of it. Perhaps during the year, something may come up and we may be asking staff to reallocate things at that time. But right now, I don't have any issues.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bailey?
This question is for Mr. Fowler. It's mostly in regards to the, sorry, the font is so small, I'm trying to read. The bleachers replacement at Morston Meadows is slotted for 1 month, and the benches the month before. Anyway, and it's getting into ball season. I'm just wondering if we'd be able to put them both into the earlier month slot, or if there's an issue with that.
Currently, the reason that was slated for that time of the year is there is an increased demand for aluminum products. According to the supplier, they don't feel they could meet the timeline first indicated for an earlier acquisition. So to play it safe, we put it in that timeline. Again, there'll be minor disruption for any type of ball season. It's basically a one-day event to replace the bleachers, so you shouldn't notice any type of heedance to baseball.
Okay, great, thanks.
Councillor Balmer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think My favorite line or statement in this report was staff are here to help. I'm feeling that. I certainly experienced that. And I think that's not just an attitude that I'm towards council. I'm glad that's there because I think it's an important message towards residents as well. And I'm feeling that. And maybe it's because it's written down. And everybody gets to see it, everybody gets to believe it, everybody gets to do it. So I really appreciate that being written into the report because I think it matters to our community, especially when we get back into in-person, face-to-face with residents again. So thank you very much for the report. It certainly helps understand who's doing what and when. So thank you.
Councillor Goyda?
Thank you very much. Thank you again for putting this corporate work plan together. I find it to be extremely helpful. I think it's probably helpful as well for our residents to see what we're working on and when. And great comments also by Councillor Balmer and recognizing that component of the report that says staff are here to help. I think that's it's really great to bring attention to that, but I have no questions or comments about the plan itself. Thank you.
Okay, all in favor, Councillor Spillis?
In favor?
Councillor Bailey?
Favor.
Councillor Balmer?
In favor.
Councillor Goyda?
In favor.
All right, ADM 2022-008. Ms. Whitefox, could you read the resolution?
That report ADM 2022-008 entitled Brock Road Crosswalk be received for information, and that staff continue to work with Wellington County to implement additional measures at the Brock Road Crosswalk, and that council formally requests enhanced and ongoing enforcement by the OPP and Ministry of Transportation in the Aberfoyle corridor.
Thank you. Can I get a mover, please? Councillor Spillis, second by Councillor Bailey. Mr. Schwendinger, anything to add?
No.
All right, Councillor Spillis.
Yes, I'm glad that the county is helping us out with the issues we have at the crosswalk location. I would like to suggest that we add another motion that the county consider this a community safety zone, and once it's been created, that the implementation of photo radar be undertaken. I think it's important. We have a lot of speeding cars through there. All it takes is one speeding car who's not mindful of what's going on and cause an unnecessary accident. I think it's important that we put this community safety zone in place and then follow up with photo radar to enforce the speeds in that area.
So if with council's indulgence, at the roads committee, county report from staff authorized 16 community safety zones throughout Wellington County. That was endorsed at the roads committee, and Aberfoyle was one of them. So technically it's not in place yet. It has to go to county committee of a whole at the end of the month, which whatever, last Thursday of the month. And I would be shocked if it wasn't supportive. So I would say that that we don't need to ask for community safety zone. Maybe the resolution could be read as supportive of the community safety zone, because that is included in that amendment we made earlier, the roads committee. And then I would change the wording from photo radar to electronic speed enforcement. It's just a technicality, Councillor Sapoulis. They don't use photo radar anymore. It's not radar, that's what it is. It's not radar, it's some other technology they use to capture the speed. So the traditional technology is electronic speed enforcement. I feel that would go a long way if Postage Council could consider endorsing the county implementing electronic speed enforcement in their community safety zones. I feel there's a bit of a push at the county level for that. I'll go back to you, Councillor Spillis, from my comments.
I don't have a issue amending the motion to be supportive of the implementation of a community safety zone. And I do agree that we should request that the be followed up with electronics. What's it, the word, Mr.
Speed
Mayor?
enforcement, electronic speed enforcement.
Enforcement, yes.
Sorry, I've just been dealing with it for 2 years, so I'm familiar with the terminology.
I'm old school, so let's
Yeah.
call it photo radar.
I'm comfortable with it being in discussion called photo radar, but when it comes to resolution, I just prefer to have proper terminology. So that's a move. I got a second for that so we can kind of discuss it. Councillor Goya. Okay, Councillor Bailey.
Thank you. In terms of the report, I'm really glad to see the communication aspect in talking to the crossing guard. I know she had some concerns, and I'm seeing that in this report, so that's really great. I was going to ask what the steps are once it's deemed a community safety zone, how we proceed. So that's been answered, and I'm in support of the motion that's been put.
Thank you. Councillor Ballmer.
In favor.
Councillor Goya.
Yeah, thank you. A couple of things. This report indicates that there's all the changes in the measures that have been implemented at the crosswalk and also in the area around the school to make it more safe. Implementing a community safety zone is another measure that would be very helpful in this regard. It's frustrating to read, though, that some people are just not being receptive and cooperative. I mean, we're talking about kids essentially crossing a 4-lane highway to get to school, and it's frustrating to see that people are just not being cooperative in that regard. In that sense, I'm fully supportive of formally requesting additional OPP presence and enforcement. I would also support endorsing the use of cameras in the community safety zone once it's established. I did just have a question for staff. I'm not exactly sure which staff member may be able to answer this, but I've seen in other municipalities that sometimes there are kind of like, I don't know what they're called, but in my mind, it's like a safety blitz carried out in the school zone. And I'm just wondering if it would be feasible for the township staff in collaboration, maybe with the OPP and the school staff, to carry out kind of like a safety blitz for a period of time to educate, but also enforce and just continue to drive the importance of the safety measures in the area. I'm not sure if that's something that has been done or could be done here in the township. I don't know if someone could answer that question.
Sure, I could speak to that, Councillor Goida. Yes, we could definitely do that. I think in terms of the education, what we could do is work with the school so that they could be sending information home with the kids to the parents so that it gets circulated that way, and then working with the OPP to have a presence there for the enforcement component that you're speaking of. I think that's definitely achievable.
Okay, is that something that you would need specific or a resolution specifically for?
No, I don't think so, because the last clause in the resolution essentially says that already, and then we would just broaden that to incorporate the information component through the school process.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I have a couple of comments first, Councillor Bailey. The line painting that occurred, the large white zebra lines, I had initially asked county staff, Mr. Kudo, for that, and they obliged quite easily, which was nice. However, Mr. Schweinner, I'd prefer if we could get them at all 4 corners of that intersection to really delineate that that's a pedestrian area. The original lines are just painted where the students cross. Maybe that'll help traffic understand, and I'm not asking for that now. When they repaint the lines come the spring, could you have some discussions with county staff that they put those lines at all 4 corners of that intersection, please?
Sure, I could speak to that if you like.
Sure.
We definitely could. What I'd like to get is their input on doing that. And I realize the increased optics that would have in the area, but one of the potential things we'd have to look at as well is if you have the crosswalks demarcated at all four corners, you may get people using the crosswalk splitting in multiple directions to go around the corner instead of sticking with where the crossing guard is. And I know that's been presented as a bit of a challenge with the crossing guard. Some of the comments have been passed along that, people are just crossing on the other side of the street, so they didn't have to follow her direction or guidance or something like that. So we'll look at that for sure. And if we can look at that as a benefit, but I just don't want to be making the problem worse or giving other opportunities and encouraging people to go elsewhere and cross elsewhere, because that's been a problem already.
Okay, well, I would then plant another seed. If it's in the report, I apologize. Larger stop bars, possibly moving them back further so that cars are further away from the pedestrians. My other comment was, so county staff recommended, or you recommended, sounds like very plain English, but no right turn, improper grammar, no right turn on red signs. And then I thought in the report it said that they've been installed. A, could you confirm they're installed? And B, I don't believe I've seen a bylaw for that yet at the county.
Maybe perhaps Mr. Fowler could confirm if they've been installed. My understanding is that they have. They said they would be doing that within a couple of days when we had the discussion with them. My understanding is that that's within the delegated authority of the road operating authority, that they didn't need to pass a specific bylaw. But perhaps Mr. Fowler could speak to that as well.
Yes, I can confirm that all the improvements that the county indicated have been completed.
And they're enforceable by the OPP?
It should be enforceable under the Highway Traffic Act, yes.
Can staff just confirm that for me, please? Because if it needs a bylaw, then I'd like to get that completed at the county level.
We can confirm that.
And then because that can go along with the extra enforcement, because it's a little concerning that one complaint is the vehicles turning right from Old Brock Road to Brock Road. Well, those are parents that they're picking up their children that attend the same school as whose kids are crossing the crosswalk. So I don't know if there's an education component. I believe there's a parents group. I don't know if there's a way of contacting the school and asking them to send out some information on, can you please not turn right or just let them know that now it's illegal to turn right on a red due to the safety concerns.
Absolutely. Fully agree with you. And we have the same concern. We had that discussion at the staff level as well. Yeah, for sure. We'll contact that or work on that through the school system too.
Awesome. Thank you. Councillor Bailey, you had your hand up.
Well, I was just going to ask for any communication regarding the safety blitz education component. Could you send correspondence through or copy it to the Puslinch Safe Communities group as well?
Sure.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Any further comments or call vote? Okay, Councillor Spillis in favor?
In favor of the amendment, yes.
Councillor, well, I'll actually go back to the clerk. Ms. Whitefox, any clarification needed with the amendments? You're comfortable?
So I've amended the initial resolution, and I've just revised our mover and seconder. And so I did not include a lot of the comments associated with the additional enforcement because it is captured in the second last line of the resolution, if that's okay with everyone. So I've just simply added that the support of implementing the community safety zone. And once it's been implemented, recommending the use of electronic speed enforcement.
Okay. All right. So Councillor Spillis still in favor?
Absolutely, yes.
Councillor Bailey?
Yep, in favor.
Councillor Bulmer?
In favor.
Councillor Goodwin?
In favor.
Excellent. All right, so we have ADM 2022-009. We have a resolution, please, Ms. Whitefox.
The council receives report ADM 2022-009 regarding the advertisement, communication, and media relations policy, the external communications provision, and that council adopts the policy either as presented or amended.
Thank you. May I have a mover, please? Councillor Spoulos, second by Councillor Goida. Councillor Spoulos.
No, I had a question and the staff answered it, and I'm happy with the way it is written. Thank you.
Councillor Bailey.
Yeah, I do not have any questions. Thank you.
Councillor Balmer.
He's out.
He declared.
Oh, that's right. Sorry. That's the, I wonder why his camera is off. And Councillor Goida.
Just one, I guess maybe point is, as it relates to the project proposals, at the rec committee, when we were talking about ideas for the Engage Puslinch website, Justine Brotherson provided us with a very handy template and actually even walked us through it as almost like a mini training. And I found that to be really helpful. Is that something we could implement for this application as well, so that everyone is on the same page in terms of what is required and how to complete a proposal for advertising?
Yes, Councillor Gorda, absolutely. That template, I believe we've shared or will be sharing with the other committee, as well as our internal departments. So I think it's been utilized a little bit and we've gotten a similar feedback, but it's been very helpful.
Okay, great.
Okay. Any further? No. Okay. All in favor? Councillor Spoulos.
In favor.
Councillor Bailey.
In favor.
Councillor Goida.
In favor.
All right. Welcome back, Matthew. All right. We have building 2022-001. We have a resolution, Ms. White-Fox.
That report, building 2022-001 with respect to the building department quarterly update for October to December 2021 be received for information.
Need a mover for that, please?
Sure.
Councillor Spoulos, seconder. Councillor Goida. I don't believe Andrew is here. So if there's any questions, who's going to answer them?
I'll do my best.
Okay. Any questions, Councillor Spoulos?
No questions.
In favor?
In favor.
Councillor Bailey?
Questions and in favor.
All right, Councillor Balmer
No questions, in favor.
and Councillor Goida.
No questions, in favor.
I have a question. So I found it surprising that in 2021, with all the building permits issued, that we only added 10 dwellings versus 24 in 2020. Is that due to the lack of supply of consents in the township? Is there anything driving that reduction in creation of dwellings?
Sorry, that one I can't answer. I can find out and get back to you though.
Yeah, I'd like to know that. We have a housing crisis and trying to build the case that we need growth. And if this is an indicator that we're, coming to the very end of our growth, that's something we could use in future discussions with delegations if we ever get them approved. So.
Sure. So it was, your question, just I'm jotting it down here, just to see if the reduction in residential units was because of lack of consents.
Yeah, lack of supply of
Yeah.
vacant lots for the.
Yep. Okay.
Or just, okay.
I'll find that out and get back to you.
Could be also just the cost. Who knows? But anyways, thank you. All right. Did everybody say they were in favor? I believe they did. Is that right, Ms. White-Fox?
Yes, I believe you were the last to comment.
Excellent. All right. So correspondence. Do we have anybody presenting 10.1.1?
We don't have Mr. Harden here today, so no.
Okay. All right. So do you have a resolution for 10.1.1? I believe 10.1.2 can be approved together.
Yes, I have one resolution to approve both the report prepared by RJ Burnside and Associates and the review of the report prepared by Hardin Environmental Services for information.
All right, I will get you to read that resolution.
So the council receives correspondence item 10.1.2 2020 permit to take water monitoring report for Victoria Park Valley Golf Club prepared by RJ Burns and Associates, and 10.1.2 review of the 2020 permit to take water monitoring report prepared by Hardin Environmental Services for information.
All right, can you move for that, please? Councillor Spools, seconder. Councillor Bailey. We'll just, I'll ask about questions on 10.1.1. That's the Burnside report. Any questions? Councillor Spools?
No, I have no questions.
Councillor Bailey?
Questions?
Councillor Balmer?
No questions.
Councillor Goida?
No questions.
Okay, and the next one is the Hardin review of that report, 10.1.2. Any questions? Councillor Spools?
No, it's a good report. The only thing I would suggest is we send it to Victoria Park Valley Golf Club for their information.
Okay, I'm comfortable with that. Councillor Bailey?
That as well, but no other questions.
Okay, Councillor Balmer?
No questions.
All right, Councillor Goida?
No questions.
Okay, all in favor? Councillor Spools?
In favor.
Councillor Bailey?
Favor?
Councillor Balmer?
In favor.
Councillor Goida?
In favor.
Okay, we have Wellington County up next. I'm going to say we'll take a 10-minute recess while Ms. White Fox moves over members from Wellington County, and I believe there'll be quite a bit of discussion around this one. So, all right, welcome back everyone from our short little break. Quick roll call. Councillor Spools.
Present.
Councillor Bailey.
Present?
Councillor Balmer.
Present.
And Councillor Goida.
Present.
All right, Ms. White Fox, you have a resolution for this next report?
The council received correspondence item 10.2, Wellington County Roadmaster Action Plan, Wellington Road 46, Strategic Traffic Analysis for information.
You gonna move for that, please?
I'll move.
I'll second.
Councillor Balmer, seconded by Councillor Spoolis. And I'm not sure if Mr. Kudo is going to present or Mr. Bumstead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's I'll be providing some introductory remarks and then hand it over to the presentation.
Sure.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to Coastal Council, thank you for inviting me here today. I'm Don Kudo, I'm the county engineer, and with me today I have Paul Bumstead from Dillon Consulting, who will be doing the presentation. I'm going to provide some brief introductory comments for council's information and turn it over to Paul to provide the presentation. I was here at Coastal Council back in June of 2019, presenting on a matter of concerns on Wellington 46 through the Aberfoyle area. On February of 2020, the Roads Committee, a report was provided to the Roads Committee in response to correspondence and delegations with respect to traffic and the lane configurations through Aberfoyle. And the report was tabled, and the recommendation was that following the reconstruction project, a traffic impact study be implemented as outlined in the report to review possible lane configurations and determine the appropriate project funding sources. Since that time, the county implemented or started the Roadmaster Action Plan, which is a large transportation master plan study, but we included a specific scope item to look at Wellington Road 46 and Aberfoyle for a traffic analysis. So Dillon, our consulting team, completed their analysis in 2021. And in September of 2021, the Roads Committees received the same presentation that you'll hear today from Dillon. And at that September Roads Committee meeting, the resolution was that the county take no further action as outlined in the report with respect to Wellington Road 46 road diet in Aberfoyle until further traffic analysis is completed following the implementation of the Morriston bypass. And this recommendation was amended by adding or the completion of the mid-block exchange on the Hanlon Expressway. So that's where the county stands with the Wellington 46 road analysis. And I will now turn it over to Paul Bumstead to provide you with the presentation on the traffic analysis. Over to you, Paul.
Thank you, Don. Good morning, Mr. Mayor and councilors. First, a couple of checks. Can you hear me adequately?
I find you a bit quiet, but I can hear you. I don't know if I have my volume right up or not.
I will make sure I speak clearly and loudly then. Thank you. And also, I'm sharing my screen. I'm hoping you can see the presentation slide deck entitled Wellington Road 46 Road Diet. I'm not sure whether you're seeing it in full screen or in the panel view. I'm not just trying to get it onto full screen, but I'm hoping it's
I see it on
legible.
full.
Full screen? Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mayor. So as Don has introduced this, the Wellington Road 46 Road Diet is a transportation assessment included as part of the Road Master Action Plan undertaken for the county. Today, I'm just going to give you the highlights of the approach, key recommendations as they relate to existing conditions, future conditions, strategic capacity review, and the actual implementation of the lane restriction. The goal of this assessment was to assess the potential effects of a proposed road diet to the community of Aberfoyle. By road diet, we're talking about conversion of the existing 4-lane section, which is 2 travel lanes in each direction between Wellington Road 34 and Gilmore Road, to a single lane in each direction with a 2-way center left turn and a parking, as you see in the graphic below. The approach to the assessment is very high level. It's based on the information at hand. We used observed traffic volumes from 2017, 2018 to identify existing conditions. So this is pre-pandemic levels. Estimates of traffic volumes were compared to planning level lane capacities to identify performance of the different sections along Wellington Road 46. Future conditions were estimated to 2041, and they are established based on background traffic growth, area travel in general, area population and employment growth, and available local secondary plans within the county. Traffic link volumes were both estimated on Wellington Road 46 specifically, and we also undertook a strategic corridor capacity review, which includes adjacent and parallel facilities. In terms of existing conditions, Wellington Road 46, formerly Highway 6, is a major arterial roadway. Its current cross sections are 5 lanes between Highway 401 and McLean Road, 4 lanes between McLean Road and Wellington Road 34, and then 2 lanes north of Wellington Road 34 to Maltby Road. Currently, there's sufficient capacity to carry the existing demand between Wellington Road 34 and Highway 401, and I'll show you some of the specific numbers related to that assessment. And between Maltby Road and Wellington Road 34, where the cross section of Wellington Road 46 is reduced to 2 lanes, volumes are approaching levels where flow is unstable and minor incidents can cause delays. So for the actual Wellington Road 46 link assessment, we looked at 3 sections of roadway, Maltby Road to County Road 34, County Road 34 to McLean Road, and McLean Road to 401. You can see there the assumptions related to the number of travel lanes, 2-way. The lane capacity assumptions, so this is the volume of traffic that can be processed within an hour at acceptable levels of flow. We use the existing average annual daily traffic, so a daily volume, to estimate a design hour and split the traffic both into northbound and southbound components by a directional split to estimate the number, the PM peak hour volume for this scenario. The volume to capacity ratio, the V/C ratio you see there, is a comparison of that PM peak hour volume, so the hourly volume, compared to the lane capacity, so the 1200. We use the 0.80 or 0.80, 0.41 and 0.4 to determine whether there are capacity issues along that section. Typically, we consider anything less than 0.7 to be good flow or well under capacity. a range of 0.7 to 85% capacity is it's approaching capacity, or at least there's unstable flow. And then anything over 0.85 is unstable flow. That's what we call, we're approaching capacity, we're at the limits of capacity and or over the theoretical capacity, which would be a value of 1.0. So you can see there that the Maltby Road to County Road 34 is performing at that, it's approaching capacity on periods of unstable flow, whereas County Road 34 to McLean Road through Aberfoyle is operating at less than 50% of its capacity, so that's good. In terms of the corridor assessment, so a strategic screen line is looking at a point across several links. We're looking at volume as it crosses. This is south of County Road 34, so sort of what we call an Aberfoyle screen line. And we're tracking north and southbound traffic across that point for Hanlon Expressway, Highway 6, Concession Road 7, Wellington Road 46, and Victoria Road. And you can see from this graphic that each of the individual links at this location is operating at a condition, or the existing condition, of very good or less than 0.4 is the highest link at Wellington Road 46 as identified previously, and that the screen line is operating well within its capacity limits. So on to the future conditions. So in terms of identifying future conditions, we look at area growth. So we're looking at background growth from external trips traveling through the area. We're looking at area growth within the county, and we're looking at specific local area developments that will have a direct impact on the corridor. You can see from this, we applied a 0.4% compound annual growth rate, which is very, very low. It's conservatively low to estimate just background trip traffic. We're looking at daily trip generation from the area municipalities, Township of Puslinch, Township of Guelph Aramosa, Township of Center Wellington, that will contribute to corridor traffic trying to access Highway 401. This would include the city of Guelph. We're not reporting on that population, but that population growth goes from 101,000 today to 121,000 today to 191,000 people in the 2041 condition, as well as growth in employment from 70,000 to 100,000 approximately. In terms of the trip generating characteristics, we're looking at daily traffic increases and what the total trip interactions are, and we convert that to our peak hour condition. For Clare Maltby, the 7,400 daily trip generation is only the trips that would have been assigned to Wellington Road 46 in our assessment. So when we look at the actual roadway capacity of the existing network, using the 2 lanes north of County Road 34 and the 4 lanes south of County Road 34, we're seeing that the level of service and the capacity conditions are exceeded on the 2-lane section and they're still good on the section south of 34. They're within acceptable ranges for good capacity. And then the actual critical screen line assessment. So the 4 facilities crossing that screen line south of 34. The capacity across the screen line is still very good. It's operating at half its capacity. And you can see that there's still capacity on Hanlon Expressway, lots of capacity on Concession Road 7, but then that's discontinuous before it gets to the 401. And then Victoria Road to the east at just under half of its capacity. So what we do with these, looking at, so in this next assessment is what would happen if we took away the capacity from Wellington Road 46. And that's just simply, we're not redistributing traffic at this point. We're just trying to understand, okay, if it was only one lane in each direction on Wellington Road 46, the capacity of the screen line is reduced, but there's still capacity on the screen line. In the local area of 46, it would be operating at 29% above its theoretical capacity. In fact, that probably wouldn't be realized as traffic would divert in the network to use alternative capacity, which is available as noted here. So in terms of the diversion potential, so what this analysis at the screen line level has told us, and at the link level has told us that in order for a one lane in each direction capacity-wise for Wellington Road 46 south of 34 to work at that acceptable range, to be at 70 to 85% of its capacity, we'd need to see 550 to 700 vehicles divert from the future conditions. So when we see a volume of 1,560 peak hour volumes in 2041, we're saying that the volume would have to come down to 800 to 1,000 for the link to operate within its capacity. And where would those 550, 700 vehicles go? How would they use the network? So in terms of looking at that assessment, we looked at it from several different perspectives. We assessed the origins and destinations of trips on Wellington Road 46. Northbound trips on Wellington Road 46 south of Aberfoyle are almost entirely destined to locations in the eastern half of Guelph. Our assessment shows that 60% are traveling to southeast Guelph and 40% are destined for northeast Guelph. Now, some of that northeast Guelph is obviously candidate for diversion, more likely to divert to alternative capacity, specifically Hanlon Expressway. But this 60% southeast of Guelph results in more out-of-way travel over a shorter distance if traveling from the 401. So we looked at the travel times using alternative routes via Hanlon Expressway to various parts of the city. Guelph, those 60% southeast Guelph and 40% northeast Guelph. We saw travel distances if using Hanlon Parkway instead of Wellington Road 46 become 25 to 50% longer. Travel times during peak hours are 25% longer. And the actual travel times, as estimated, vary depending on the length of the trip. There's typically about a 7 to 10 minute increase in travel time for each user. So if you're diverting trips from northbound Wellington Road 46 to 401 and then to Hanlon Parkway, they're traveling at least, it's a roughly 4 kilometer distance between the two interchanges. So you're traveling that out of way travel and in some cases coming back. So travel distances as assessed resulted in about 12 to 15 kilometers of additional travel distance. We looked at past studies, the 2000 Gordon Street EA. We looked at the preliminary design review and detailed design in the class environmental assessments currently being undertaken by the ministry, which include the Morriston bypass, new interchanges, including a new interchange at the mid-block just south of Maltby Road. And we looked at the 95 preliminary design study. Now the forecasts that were provided from these reports and in contact with the actual consultants that did the work, there's a lot of information that isn't quite there for purposely understanding what land use assumptions were included in terms of traffic counts that were considered existing in those studies, which are circa 1995 and later. It's hard to understand or hard to quantify exactly what constitutes the chemistry or the makeup of those volumes. So we don't know what the land use assumption was specifically in the Wellington Road 46 corridor. We don't know how the network changed over that time period, specifically related to trips that might divert to new capacity or use different routes within the city. So there's some things that are still unknowns and need to be addressed as part of future study. But what we can say is, looking at this 550 to 700 vehicles, how would they divert, and is there really an opportunity for them to divert efficiently? So one of the conclusions coming from the analysis to date was that the diversion away from Wellington Road 46 is a result of planned improvements, and specifically the Morriston bypass is not significant enough to suggest that lane capacity reductions will result in satisfactory operating conditions. And what that means is, from the volume forecasts from the ministry studies, we're seeing that we're able to quantify about 200 to 300 vehicles that divert away from Wellington Road 46, but that is not in the order of magnitude that's needed to the 550 and the 770 or a one-lane cross or two-lane cross section, one lane in each direction to work through Aberfoyle. So in summary, the conclusions and sort of ways forward for the road master action plan, we're stating that by 2041, the two-lane section of Wellington Road 46 is forecast to experience significant congestion along its existing two-lane cross section. A reduction in the capacity between Gilmore Road and County Road 34 would result in capacity issues. The broader strategic corridor network has the capacity to absorb the 550 to 700 peak hour vehicles. So the Screen Line does have the capacity, but the magnitude of the diversion currently forecast based on the origin destination patterns and the associated travel time and distance increases isn't likely to be in the order required to make or allow the one lane in each direction to work. The Morriston bypass is likely to result in some reduction, but it's not significant enough to justify a reduction in capacity on 46. Any reduction in capacity on Wellington Road 46 through Aberfoyle is likely to result in significant volume increases on adjacent non-county roadways. So by that, I mean Gilmore Road, McLean Road, and Victoria Street. So if congestion starts to appear or materialize on Wellington Road 46 in Aberfoyle, you will get diversion of local traffic and trips that want to use Wellington Road 46 to accommodate the origin or destination. So when we're talking about 60% of the volume being in Southeast Guelph, one of the obvious alternatives is to divert away using Gilmore or McLean onto Victoria, and those roadways are not designed for that level of traffic or that type of traffic. A road diet is feasible from the community perspective and from a strategic capacity perspective, but the impacts on the municipal network is not desirable from an operational perspective. The Road Master Action Plan is making recommendations. So we're carrying the recommendation to widen the section of Wellington Road 46 from 2 lanes to 4 lanes in the long term. So in a 10 to 20 year time period. And we're also suggesting that there are studies, 2 studies that will be required. That would be an area transportation review. And this is to specifically look at the future infrastructure and service improvements that are planned in the immediate future. So the Morriston bypass, the Hamlin Expressway improvements, including the new interchange, even all-day service, 2-way rail service on the Kitchener line in Guelph, which can help take some of the demand in terms of interactions with the GTA. So those improvements and the land uses that are coming online related to those improvements. So we understand that there are potential for development along County Road 34, closer to the new interchange. And those need to be looked at once we can quantify them specifically. Doing traffic counts today is difficult in terms of the pandemic impacts. Even today, anecdotally, it's suggested that volumes have only returned to about 85% of their pre-pandemic levels. We'd like to see that sort of level out before doing new counts. It suggested that once these new infrastructure improvements come in play, we'll better understand the travel demands in the area and how they specifically relate to 46. So there are recommendations to undertake within the next 5 years, an area transportation study specifically focusing on Wellington Road 46. And also an EA would have to be completed if the 4-lane section is to be realized north of 34. And that would include looking at alternatives to Wellington Road 46. So that is the quick overview, I hope, and I'd be happy to receive questions.
Thank you, Paul. If you could just stop sharing your screen for me, please.
Sure.
I just had a few questions before I hand it over to council. You were discussing the trips to the southeast portions of Guelph, and that any deviation to the Hanlon would add extra travel and distance for people, so they behaviorally they probably would not do that. I'm just curious if, and I missed it in the reports over the last year or so, what's considered the southeast and the northeast part of Guelph that's driving the traffic through Aberfoyle on 46?
Most significant development would be the Clare Maltby secondary plan. There are about 10,000 units proposed for that area. It's generating approximately, in terms of peak hour trips, almost 5,000 peak hour trips. Roughly about 15 to 20% of those trips are destined to the 401 corridor via Wellington Road 46, as identified in the secondary plan assessment. So that's the most significant. The South Guelph is really anything sort of south of the river. So when we say southeast, we're talking about south of the river and east of Hanlon Road Parkway. And then northeast is obviously north of the river and to the east of Gordon Street.
Okay, the reason why I asked that is because Victoria to the east, north of the river, habitual traffic would go to cross Highway 7 down Guelph line. So that's my question line there. A follow-up on that is, did anybody physically drive these routes? Did you put boots on the ground?
Yes.
Okay, because I did my own little experiment. I merged onto the 401. I drove 100 kilometers an hour on the 401 with risk to my own life doing that, I will say. And I went north to the Hanlon, timed it, abided by the speed limit, and went to Stone Road. And then I correspondingly started at Gordon at Stone and drove south down Gordon to the 401. And the trip was 8 minutes longer than taking the other one. So I understand this was a pretty high level report, but I feel that there would be situations where, sure, it may feel longer, but to physically drive them, now that they've done the Clare overpass, they've removed the stoplight at Sleeman, people don't realize it's quite an efficient way to go. And that'll even be compounded further when the mid-block is done, because we'll lose the light at 34. So lots in your report, great report. Thank you for coming to present it to council. I think there's a lot of unknowns, as you've mentioned, with traffic patterns, everything from the mid-block interchange to any even local improvements. So I'll hand it over to council now for questions. Councilor Spose.
Yes, I have three issues which were replied to by you and our Mr. Kudo. I'm a little bit taken aback that the EA study was done for Gordon is not a document that you say it's referred to. I just find it very disconcerting that you cite it as a reference document, and then when I use the data in there to compare to what you have today, it's very summarily dismissed that we don't know what's going on there type of thing. Isn't it important to look at previous studies and understand what's changed from those studies that would have made your traffic counts different than what was predicted at that time?
Yeah, thank you for your question, Councillor. Yeah, I wouldn't like to categorize our review of those studies as summarily dismissing them. We're looking that study was completed in the year 2000, and the volumes that are identified as existing conditions obviously reflect, a network that is, 20 years ago, land use conditions that are 20 years ago, land use forecasts that are 20 years ago. So when we look at those studies, that study identified the need for a 4-lane section on Wellington Road 46. We look at the volumes, we compare our volumes, but what we have to go forward with is the fact that we know what is on the ground today, and we know what the policy position is in terms of growth moving forward. So there are, several items that change over time. That it's not that we devalue the work that was done in the 2000 EA, we just acknowledge that a lot of things have changed. So when we compare a 2025 forecast, let's say from a 2000 report, and compare that to an existing condition today, it's not apples and apples. So we move forward with what we know, and we use the past work as guidance in terms of any things that have not changed, distribution patterns, or any material things that are identified as being an assumption. So they were used, they are referenced. We have lots of work, background material that we use to compare the volumes, but then we try to tell a more succinct story as we move forward with today's information.
Okay, aren't you going to be in the same position with respect to the Brock Road widening from Maltby to Wellington 34, in that you're suggesting we should do an EA within 1 to 5 years and do the construction 10 to 20 years? Again, you got a big time frame between your EA and your implementation. Aren't you going to be doing the same thing again, banking all your information on something that's 15 plus years old?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. Well, things will change over 15 years, and the lifespan that the EA does have a shelf life. We've put our effort and cost into where we think the most important information can be achieved. So we're looking at let's do an area study to identify what the effect of these infrastructure improvements are. Once they're in place, we have land use forecasts, and we move forward. We think 5 years is a reasonable time period to move forward with an EA. It'll probably take 2 or 3 years to complete. So by the time it's complete, it'll be sort of 8 years down the road, and only 2 or 3 years away from actually looking at when the construction will happen. So it's not specifically a difference between 5 years and 20 years. There's a process that's going on there, and the gap gets smaller. So we want to be within 5 years, within 5 to 7 years. And I think the plan as it's identified is aggressive, but appropriate.
Okay, I have a series of questions with respect to the diversion.
Councillor Spoulos.
Yes.
I'm just gonna let Mr. Kudo speak, because I believe he wanted to add something to your first 2 questions.
Great,
Mr. Kudo.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. Yeah, just to let council know that sure, the Gordon Street EA was done in 2000, but since 2000, there's been 4 development charges background studies that also did transportation analysis in those development charge study, and they all concluded the 4-lane requirement for this section between Maltby and County Road 34. So there's been a 2005 as well, Guelph Wellington master plan that confirmed that finding. And I believe the current city transportation master plan, the traffic analysis still shows the need for the 4-lane requirement. So it's these studies are occurring as changes happen and land use happens, changes, growth changes. And we're committed to keep reviewing the change that will happen over the future horizon to see, to confirm what is needed for construction there.
Yeah, no, I appreciate your comments, Mr. Kudo. The comment I have on that is, well, how about considering all the future improvements in the area? And Mr. Bumstead sort of addressed that as part of an area-wide study in the future. So I understand what you're saying. Okay, so next series of questions relate to the diversion of the traffic. Your 2041 traffic, that's a big increase. And that number of 1550, is that including a diversion at all? Or is that just saying basically, this is what we're going to have, we're assuming zero diversion?
Correct. The 1550 assumes no diversion, just what are the corridor, what are the route demands, so the primary origin destination results.
Okay, I guess to that, Mr. Kudo in his email of July 14, 2021 to our mayor indicated that there was 2,900 cars diverted because of slowdown or due to construction on reducing some of the lanes. So when I do the math and extrapolate that down, I get about 147 can be diverted from the peak hour. Then when I up it by the 56% growth that you're projecting for 2041, I get a 230 car diversion, and that's not even considering the other improvements that we'll be making, such as the mid-block interchange, such as the Morrison bypass, concession 7. We're going to be paving south of the 401. That should give somebody the opportunity to scoot all the way down if they want to go all the way down to Gordon Road and bypass that section. And the fact that we're going to be pushing for speed enforcement in this section. Once we get speed enforcement, the speeds that we're getting now, they're exceeding the 50 km per hour significantly. I think the mayor has statistics on that. Mr. Mayor, can you comment on that?
I believe the 85th percentile on the correspondence I last received from Mr. Kudo was 23 kilometers per hour over the 50 kilometer an hour posted speed limit zone. I represented that number at Roads Committee. I believe I said 26, but I looked it up afterwards. 23 kilometers per hour in the 85th percentile in the 4-lane configuration.
Okay, so there's something that's going to be happening here. If we do get the speed enforcement, you're going to be people are not going to look at this as a convenient factor type of thing. So my question to you is, does it make sense to ignore diversions to given the fact that we've got possibility of 230 because of one extrapolation of a construction number, and does it make sense to ignore that there's going to be a possibility of diversions that things like speed control get implemented in this section, and does not make sense that we'll be seeing a deduction closer to the 500 mark than a 0 mark?
Well, we agree that there will be diversion. That the new network will result in alternative routes within the network to accommodate specific trips. Our assessment looks at it from the perspective of capacity only, in terms of how many trips would need to divert for a 2-lane section through Aberfoyle to operate efficiently and safety. We have, so when we say that, the capacity today is 1,200 per lane. We're going to drop down to 1,200 capacity. We don't want 1,200 cars using that roadway. We want approximately 1,000. So that 1,550, the undiverted volume forecast, less the 1,000 that we suggest would remain and the road would operate appropriately. That's where the 550 diversion comes from. So at a minimum, 550 vehicles would have to divert in the 2041 scenario. The effect of two things. One, the network. Yes, providing another connection to Hanlon Expressway at that sort of mid-block provides an opportunity, but it's also being put there to serve development. When we looked at the forecasts from the ministry, they're only forecasting peak direction volumes in the PM peak hour of about 300 vehicles exiting at that interchange. That 300 would have components that are divertible trips and local development. We understand that there's potential for a significant development along the 34 corridor near the interchange. We don't know what that is yet or how long of a time frame that is. So that's not in our forecast. And the 300, if they're diverting from a 401 or Highway 6 to the south trip, that would be a short distance diversion over 8 kilometers of out-of-way travel if they're diverting. So if you're coming from the east on 401, and instead of getting off at County Road 46, you go the 4+ kilometers to the interchange, up to the new interchange and back across the 4 kilometers. That's 8 kilometers of out-of-way travel over a very short sort of north-south section. So I'm not saying that the diversion isn't possible. I'm saying that for 500, or like in the worst case, we said 700 plus 700 to get us down to even, to that 70% of capacity. It's what trips, like who's diverting and how much out of way travel, how likely is it that they will travel that far out? So we're not saying that the volume will be 1,550, saying that so the second part of that is the land use generation coming out of Clare and Maltby is less divertible or less likely to divert if it's going to the east on 401 or south on Highway 6. It's less likely to divert than traffic that would come from the north part of Guelph. That makes sense. So that interchange location, while it seems to be like opening up opportunities for diversion, it would really be focused on trips that are A, locally generated by new development, and B, trips that are destined to and from the west on Highway 401 from Clare. And that proportion of traffic is significantly less than the sort of 401 to the GTA or Highway 6 to the south. So yes, there will be diversion. The quantity of it needs to be 500 to 700 vehicles. Quantifying who's divertible is part of a future study, because we can't identify that with the information we have today, given the network changes that are coming down the pipe and the land use.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's all the questions I have. I just want to make one comment. If they build it, they will come. We built the four lanes, and we're going to get the traffic. And if we don't reduce it, we're going to be having a lot of traffic through that, and possibly affecting the livability of our community there.
Thank you. Councillor Bailey.
Thank you. I think I'm going to get out of the weeds a little bit and just make a few more broader comments that you've touched on the diversion. And I think what I haven't heard any talk about sort of behavioral changes or campaigns to divert new people into a different municipality. So we're talking about an issue here where it's not even our residents sort of causing this problem, this issue. So we're talking about traffic coming out of Guelph that's going to become our problem. And so I'm thinking we need to have some sort of right off the bat behavioral incentives. So ways to make people go around and take that extra 4 kilometers, take that extra 8 kilometers. Backing on Mr. Mayor's story, I live southeast Puslinch, and we are often going to Centennial, going to college, going to the west. I always jump on the 401 and take the Hanlon up. It is longer. It takes longer kilometer, but it is smoother, it's faster, and it's not going through people's towns, villages, backyards, right? It's going how it was intended. So anyway, I would like to see a little more on how we can design the diversion so people want to take it. And maybe that means keeping really crowded 2-lane highways through our village. If you build it, they will come. It's a whole topic about induced demand. It might seem like a really great idea, and it might work at the beginning, but ideally, if someone sees a really easy way through Aberfoyle and through it, they're going to go that way. So maybe by not making it a nice way to go, maybe by keeping it a smaller, narrower way, people will change their behavior and go around. So that's just kind of my big observation. I appreciate all the studies that have happened with this report. You've got a lot of numbers thrown in there. I do have a question. When the roundabout was done at 46 and 34, we did have to divert a lot of traffic, and maybe Mr. Kudo or can comment on this. Do we know how much traffic during peak volume, peak hour, was diverted during that time? Because I've got 990 is the number at 46. When that construction was happening, were we diverting close to 700 at that time?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. I don't have that data. I mean, we did have, we never did close the road for construction. I believe there's only a brief closure for when we did the final paving, but yeah, sorry, I don't have an answer for you on volumes that were traffic volumes during that construction period.
Because it would be interesting to know when an area is inconvenient, how many people actually choose to go around, right? And then it becomes habitual. So that's just a comment of mine. Can you just confirm for me the timing of this EA study that's proposed? Is it in terms of the timing of the Maltby interchange? Can you confirm for me how that timing's looking? Is it occurring after the mid-block interchange?
Yeah, so the resolution, the direction from the roads committee is to further review further traffic analysis completed following the implementation of the Morston bypass or the completion of the mid-block exchange on the Hanlon Expressway. So we will do a further traffic analysis at that time to see what kind of, if there has been any traffic pattern changes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Kudo, however, at our latest roads committee meeting, in the 1 to 5 year plan, it does identify spending significant monies on an EA and prep work for that ahead of the mid-block interchange. Is that not correct? But there was 800,000 for an EA and I don't know, 80 grand or something for some other consulting.
Through you,
Oh, sorry.
through Mr. Mayor, I mean, the money that we would do for an EA would be looking at, I mean, if the traffic analysis indicates, I guess, significant changes that a road diet is applicable, then in order to proceed with a road diet, you would want to go through an EA process because you'd want to make sure that, you know, the surrounding residents and on Victoria and Gilmore Road would know about the changes to the traffic patterns there, the cost share that the township would have to undertake to have those improvements on those roads, and the increased maintenance. You know, there's a lot of, as Paul pointed out in his presentation, that that there would be impacts on non-county roads. So there would be, that's what that EA study would do. So there's, yeah.
Sorry, I was referring to page 99 of our Roads Committee agenda. And it states that in the short-term capital cost estimate, 0 to 5 years, planning studies, Wellington Road 46 study area, 50K, Wellington Road 46 EA study, 500,000. I believe that was the information, Councillor Bailey. Is that what you were looking for? See what was being spent?
Yeah,
Okay.
I had some numbers here, but yeah.
So that's what was approved at Roads Committee, Mr. Kudo? Or is that just a placeholder, or what are those numbers there for?
Yeah, so Mr. Mayor, so what we presented at Roads Committee was the overall implementation plan for the Roadmaster Action Plan. So it has a number of projects in there for the county to consider, like $161 million of improvements around the county. And that includes some planning studies slotted in different timeframes to help us either implement projects or to, as Paul noted, further area specific studies to do more detailed studies is also recommended in that implementation plan in the roadmap.
Yeah, what I'm hearing from council here is they're concerned the county moving ahead with these EAs and spending this money ahead of the mid-block interchange being either completed or at least nearly completed. So that's what I'm hearing from council here, because then it sets a direction. But I'll let the other councillors comment. Councillor Bummer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, Mr. Kudo and Mr. Bumstead. Thank you so much for your presentation. Overarching observation here is, of course, that it's a bit of a, I don't want to, maybe clash is too strong a word, but two visions are bumping up against each other here. This council's vision of Aberfoyle as a visitable, walkable destination, understanding it's limited in its growth potential for residential use, it certainly has some potential to become a destination that people might want to be able to stop and shop and walk around in. And that's bumping up against the county roads department's reasonable expectation and their duty to move vehicles and move them efficiently and quickly around the county and between municipalities. And I guess I see kind of my job here on council and county council's job too is to help to find ways, identify opportunities to help align those two different, sometimes what appear to be divergent interests, but find opportunities where they can align or things can be done to help each achieve their individual goals. So I am very empathetic to the county's position here regarding County Road 46. I can remember when the Aberfoyle bypass was built, often referred to as the Hanlon Expressway, and land use patterns were established in Guelph, with a lot more employment lands on the southeast side than are there now, which is now since then become converted to residential development, which changed some of the expected traffic patterns. And with further residential development on the east side of Guelph, we're going to see more of it. And I'm also, I do hear what you're saying and share the concerns that you've expressed regarding where those diverted vehicles might go. We do get concerns from residents on Victoria Road and Watson Road about traffic and speed. And so that is it's a legitimate concern for me as well. And I appreciate that you've identified it. But at the same time, I have a very strong desire to see Aberfoyle become a walkable destination. And I share the concerns, and I'm glad the mayor identified it. I'm really grateful to see that there are additional studies that are going to be done before the decision to widen Brock Road to 4 lanes is done. And I just wondered if you could speak to that point about the timing of that, because that is the core of my concern. Is that, do we have any commitment from the county or the roads department related to that additional work being done before and I don't want to try just focus on the mid block. Perhaps my question should be related more to the bigger impact, which will be the flyover at 34 and the reconstruction of concession 7, which I think those two things will have a greater impact. Those additional studies won't take place until we see the upgraded concession 7, the flyover on 34. Those are the things I think will change the patterns. And if we had the studies done after those were implemented, I'd have some comfort. So maybe you can speak to that point for a moment.
Mr. Kudo?
Okay, through Mr. Mayor. So the 4 laning between Maltby and County Road 34 is in the beyond 10-year forecast for the county. It's not necessary to do an EA for that 4 laning. That is an approved environmental assessment. So there's no process beyond that. The area study, the EA that has been referred to in the roadmap would be the EA to do a road diet in Aberfoyle. And that would only come following this further traffic analysis when the mid-block connection is done. So if there's significant changes to that travel patterns that would support an area study to go to an EA process at that point in time, we would seek direction from our county roads committee if they would like to consider a road diet in Aberfoyle, and look to the township as well, how they would like to contribute to that study and review as to the impacts, not only in Aberfoyle, but on other roads, local roads in the area. So that helps with the timing of studies. I would say the next study that would occur would be the traffic analysis when the mid-block connector is completed. And from there, that would lead to, subsequent decisions on further studies.
Thank you. I just want to confirm something that maybe I misunderstood previously, but I think maybe this is something Councillor Sapoulos was getting at, and I had concerns before about old EAs being used to justify widenings of roads. So if I understood what you just said, there's a potential that after the concession 7 is rebuilt and the mid-block interchange is there and the flyover is on the Hanlon, and there may be a situation where we could go back to 2 lanes through Aberfoyle, the road diet as you call it, but because the EA that's already been completed for widening it to 4 lanes north of Aberfoyle has been done, we'll widen it anyway. We're not going to that we don't need to reconsider those changes. So you'll narrow it through Aberfoyle and widen it north of it regardless of the need.
To you, Mr. Mayor, if the road diet did come up as a viable alternative, then I would consider that the reopening of that EA could be considered. I mean, that would take the city of Guelph on board as well, because they are partner to that as well. So I'm not, reopening of an EA, I'm not sure exactly how that would occur. I've never experienced that, but once again, it would be, the sequencing would be do this traffic impact study for the mid-block interchange. If road diet is something that wants to be pursued at that time, do that area-wide EA and determine what the impacts would be.
Okay, this is interesting. So I just want to make sure I don't want to misunderstand what you, it sounds like you're, be careful how I say this, because you're in a tight spot, that you feel that you're committed to the EA that's already been completed, that says we need to widen 34 or 46 from 34 to Maltby, regardless of any new information that comes to light that suggests it may not be needed. You feel committed to having to do it because there's an environmental assessment out there that says it's necessary.
Through Mr. Mayor to the council, yeah, there is a commitment to the there's a commitment through EA processes that you've come up with a decision through consultation, through stakeholders, to many people and jurisdictions, of course, to the city as well. That affects their traffic, their development, their travel patterns as well. So, yeah, it would be can't foresee how it all will play out, other than we don't have the need to widen 4 lanes to between Maltby and County Road 34. We push that project out
Okay.
to the plus 10-year forecast. So there's
Okay.
time to look at different steps here.
Excellent. Okay, so the study is done to enable it when it's warranted, but it doesn't commit you to do it even if it isn't warranted. Is that a fair? Prior to it's not, it doesn't commit you to widening it prior to it being warranted.
It's already warranted.
Well, this is the thing, but it was warranted under old conditions. If those conditions change, that's what I'm trying to understand. What I heard is that regardless of whether traffic patterns change, because, which is Councillor Sepoulis' point, if things change, why are we going to build it? Just because an EA from 20 years ago said it was warranted then, if the warrants change, can't we just not do it?
So your concern is that the city of Guelph would not want to open up the EA?
Yeah, so.
No, your concern, Mr. Kudo's concern. So what it boils down to is we have a 20-year-old EA that says that the Brock Road should be widened. We were an equal partner. I say the county, I don't know the level of participation at Puss Lunch, but I'm sure they're involved. The results of that said that we shall widen 46, so the county is committing to that. And then regardless of the time going by, there is not much desire to reopen the EA to see if that is actually still warranted. Is that a fair statement, Mr. Kudo?
I guess getting back to it's certainly the EA was done in 2000, but there's been subsequent studies that keep confirming that the need for the widening, and our current study, which is probably more detailed in those than some of those interim studies, confirms the need. It is a joint EA that was conducted with the city and county at the time.
To at least put council at ease. To at least put council at ease. This has been pushed out to was it 5 to 10 or 10-year capital forecast. The only thing that may have, and I'm still not quite understanding, but in that roads committee report there was 650,000 for some planning studies. I thought you said today that was for if the mid block is done, and then there's a need to study traffic patterns, but can you give this council some direction on how, what direction the widening is going to go in the 0 to 5 year period? Are you starting the planning process for widening it, or is everything in a holding pattern for a few years? So there's not a real big fire here that we're putting out quite yet, because it sounds like there's going to be a big fire later.
0 to 5 year, through you, Mr. Mayor, in the 0 to 5 year, there's no planning, design work to be done.
Brilliant.
Paul may be able to chime in as to, he set up the implementation plan as to if I'm missing some of the details there. That's Paul's input.
Yeah, so if I can provide some enhancement to the detail. Based on our road diet analysis, we see the need to do more investigation to quantify how much traffic could actually divert when these new pieces of infrastructure are put in place. And our understanding is that MTO is proceeding with detailed design at this point on these pieces of infrastructure, which puts them potentially in the next 5 years. And so we've allocated time to do, or funds to do, an area transportation study. We put it in the 5 year because it could be that early. And to look at our transportation assessment, assess the diversion, identify corridor needs, area needs, and then specifically conclude, make some conclusions or draw some conclusions on what that means for demands on Wellington Road 46. If an EA is required to make changes, to investigate opportunities in more detail, if the hypothesis is a road diet is required and there's diversion potential, then we move to follow the EA process to say, what are the alternatives for the corridor? Is a road diet the right action? And that's all focusing on sort of the nearer term issues. The longer term issue is 34 to Maltby. And we say that currently we've identified a need for that widening. We have an EA that supports that widening, and it could proceed. If we'd identified it in 5 years, it could proceed. If it's in the 10 to 20 right now, that's if we identify a need for it from all these other studies, then it can be implemented. If there's not the demand, if the other studies identify that it can be deferred, I think it becomes the newer position. But right now, the thinking is it will need to be 4 lanes until set, and we can, the county can proceed with that. But the newer studies coming out may provide more intelligence about the timing and need of it.
Okay, Councillor Balmer.
Thank you, Mr. Bumstead. That's exactly the answer I was looking for, that it was going to be based on some updated intelligence as to the timing of the widening. I appreciate that. That's very, very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Goyda.
Thank you. Thank you very much for clarifying the timing of the widening, because that was a big misunderstanding to me. I was not understanding that correctly. So that greatly helps clarify that. And so I won't dwell on that any longer. I do have a couple other questions. In terms of the volume counts, I understand that the counts from 2017 and 18 are being used as the base figures of the pre-pandemic. I'm curious to know if there has been consideration for how the pandemic has changed and may continue to change commuter traffic in the future. I know that these growth projections were completed before the pandemic began. And obviously the world has changed dramatically in the past 2 years. So in terms of future traffic projections, have those considered any type of shift in just working remotely from a broader perspective?
Thank you, Councillor. Through you, Mr. Mayor. The current forecasts do not account for the effects of trip reductions or travel behavior as a result of the pandemic. As I think I said in the presentation, some recent studies from late in the summer / early fall of 2021 in the Toronto area suggests that volumes or trip making has rebounded to about 85% of what it was pre-pandemic. And the question, yeah, everyone's asking the question, how close to normal or pre-pandemic normal will we get back to it, and when do we get back to it? So two thoughts. One is that obviously even these virtual meetings have become more of standard practice, and less trip making is, we're not in council chambers, we're not having these in-person meetings. So there are business applications that now allow people to work from home and more frequently and sometimes entirely. The effect that has in congested areas, when trip making for peak hours happens over a peak period. So we assess the peak hour, but between, let's say, if the peak hour is 8 o'clock, the real sort of peak travel demands for a morning occur between 6 and 9. And what happens when in conditions like these, it becomes more focused. There might be less people who are making trips between 6 and 7 now say, well, I don't have to avoid the crush anymore. I can travel between 7 and 8. So they come back to the traditional peak hour. So that sort of hourly peak is fairly stable as it relates to growth. And what happens is daily trip making changes, peak period trip making changes, the peak hour stays fairly steady. And the second point is that we're looking, our assessment looks over a 20-year time period, and it relies on information, historical information as well. But when we see population employment growing by 2%, it's fairly predictable that trip making grows by 2%. And when one trip disappears from the network, other things happen. So if there are less people commuting for trips, there are more people making service deliveries and Amazon trucks and van deliveries. There are things that compensate. And likewise for technology, as we move away from gasoline powered, fossil fuel powered vehicles, the thought was, well, we won't be making auto trips. Well, we probably will. We're just making electronic vehicle trips. So the reason for rationale for looking over 20 years is because the trends are fairly static over time. So we're fairly confident, within 10% typically of what our peak hour will look like, and that's what we base our design on. And so, yes, there's a pandemic feature. We don't know how that will roll out over time. We go with our best information, knowing that trends come and go, and things, there are spikes and drops, but over 20 years we're fairly level. So I hope that sort of addresses your question.
Yeah. Okay. The other, I guess, point or comment or question, I guess, is, the conclusion in this report speaks to the fact that the lane and the capacity reduction through Aberfoyle will not result in a satisfactory operating conditions. And then the Roads Master Plan recommends in time adding lanes between Maltby and Wellington Road 34. And these conclusions and recommendations are based on the sole objective of providing the easiest and fastest route to travelers who are almost entirely destined to Guelph outside our community. So, I'm absolutely all about being a good neighbor, but it seems as though facilitating a fast and convenient roadway to the residents of Guelph comes at a detriment to the quality of life to our own community in Aberfoyle. Through Aberfoyle is where our residents live. They have businesses there, they go to school there. It's the heart of our recreational facilities. These are all the things through that corridor that shape our entire township. And those things don't get recognized anywhere in here. So I'm curious to know, how are those other big picture priorities, which are of utmost importance to us on this council, how do those get factored into the plan and considered?
I'd like to speak to that. One of the items I've raised throughout this process of the roadmap is the vision statement. And in the vision statement, it doesn't include a component of social economic component. It clearly states in the vision statement that, I should pull it up. Basically, layman's terms, priority is to move goods and people. And I feel that, I'd like to see a component in the vision statement that they take into account the social and economic impacts of these types of studies and improvements on our residents. Of course, I'm gonna go on a bit of a rant here. Of course, the EA that helped pay for or participated in states that we should twin Brock Road to 4 lanes to support their assessment growth, their citizens, on our taxpayers' dime. $10 million improvement to a road on county taxpayers for our neighboring. Now there would be some arguments, I'm sure, from Councillor Bummer about, some of the goods would go into Guelph that our constituents purchase, but they're already going on a train through Arkle, or they're going on a trucks already up the Hanlon. So there could be an argument, but yeah, I see this as a full subsidy for another neighboring municipality. I do agree we should be a good neighbor, but sometimes there might be a component that we have to look after ourselves first. And I believe it starts at the vision statement, Councillor Goida. I'd like to see a component of social and economic benefit to our community in that vision statement. Councillor Goida.
Sorry, I would agree with that. I feel like it's an integral part of the whole conversation is just not existent. It's missing, and I think it can't just be ignored. It can't just be about moving traffic. It has to be about the people who live in those communities as well. And if the vision statement is where it needs to be, I'm indifferent. I just think it needs to be part of the conversation.
Mr. Kudo, maybe you could comment on the importance of the vision statement. To me, still, I wouldn't say new, I'd say I'm shiny now. Vision statement kind of drives the policy, right? So if there were a component of that included in the vision statement, would that drive the policy somewhat?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the vision statement was brought to Roads Committee in the spring and April. And it was decided that time so there's no plan to change the vision statement at this point in time.
I understand that, Mr. Kudo, as I brought this up at those times. My question to you is, does the vision statement drive the policy, or is it just kind of a fancy little logo to have at the top?
Yes, it does.
Thank you. Councillor Goida, do you have a further comment?
I think I'm trying to process some thoughts here on the fly, but I think
I can give you some time. I have a bunch of notes here that I'd like to address. So
yeah, okay.
some time.
Yeah. Okay.
I believe this Mr. Kudo, our neighbor to the north for Puslinshire, they've put several of their roads on a road diet, and some that come to mind are my scratch go here, Downey, College, Imperial. Imperial was initially just to Paisley. They've now put Paisley on a road diet, leave up to Willow, or I guess that would have completed it to all the way to Speedvale. I know you spent some time there. I don't know, were you there when any of those road diets were implemented? And if so, how did they go about implementing road diets in their roads? If you weren't there, do you have any insight on how they're able to implement road diets?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yeah, I mean, there were road diets that did occur at my time at the city. I would say that was done through our traffic services group. It was under the Public Works Department, not part of the engineering services group. Typically we would help with the design and implementation of it. The actual traffic studies, etc., were not done as part of my review. yeah, this is generally the public consultation, the volume review, typical, what Dylan has provided us with the road diet. That's my background on those road diets.
Okay, I'm just curious how, the city, when I started driving as a young man, I believe the population was 60,000. We're probably at 120, depending on student enrollment at the U of G. And they've doubled their population, and they've been able to implement road diets on their roads. And, I'm sure maybe they have stats that they were really low for traffic counts per peak hour. I'm not sure, but I'd like to see, I don't know, I'd like to see how other municipalities are able to implement road diets and not have a detriment, which will bring me to this statistic. I get that the road has a capacity and we have to have a number that we feel is a component that the road is operating within, its design criteria. And once it goes past that, we should look at it. However, it was brought up earlier that the speeding across the county is an issue. Mr. Kudo and I and everybody around here are well aware of all the discussions we've had out of the county council. And, one of the components of speeding when you contact the OPP for enforcement is it more than 15 kilometers per hour? If it's not, then typically it's not considered needing action. And here we have, I have emails and stats that shows that 23 kilometers per hour in a 50 zone. Now the worry is all of a sudden there's going to be a report to move the speed limit up, but I don't believe that's going to happen through this roadmaster action plan. That's been addressed. Speed limits won't go up. But if we twin this thing, we don't have a commitment from the OPP to do the enforcement, and the speeds are going to go up. So if you have a road that has a little bit higher ratio, 1.2, whatever the number is, does that equate to people driving slower if it's above its operating capacity? I don't know, Paul, you want to answer that or not?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. If 1.2, if you're at a V over C of 1.2, you've got gridlock. You can't actually have theoretically, you can't have a V over C that's 1.2, because once you reach the capacity of the road at 1, you've got gridlock, you have irrational behavior, the system breaks down.
Okay.
So it's a benchmark for, 1.28 means, we definitely have a significant issue 20 years from now under the foundation assumptions. So there's a fine line between providing the capacity so people can move efficiently and controlling the speed through capacity. A 2-lane road is just as likely to have speeding issues as a 4-lane road, depending on the characteristics of the adjacent use and the role and function of the roadway. So it's not just about provide more capacity, get higher speeds. Yes, as we approach capacity, speeds tend to go down as people should be more cautious. But we know in practice that what happens is you get irrational behavior, and that causes more problems. You get people using local roads to connect. They divert to use local roads which aren't designed for them. You get speeding issues on other roads. You get higher frequency of collisions. You get environments that aren't safe for pedestrians. I mean, all the things that you're talking about in Aberfoyle and the need for road diet. Those are the things that speed is not necessarily equatable with capacity.
Okay, fair enough. I truly believe in diversion as a better alternative than just jamming more cars in so that they have to go slower. This is a very high level, but I'm sure there probably hasn't been many conversations around the design of the intersection of Maltby and 46. I'm understanding that the city of Guelph is responsible for that entire intersection, the right of way. However, we already have enough serious accidents, fatalities at that prospect of travelers trying to, now cross 4 lanes of traffic there, to me equates to more deaths. And so one design criteria is important to me. And couple roundabouts that, so this will all lead into the diversion part of things. Even if a roundabout was built prior to the twinning, in conjunction with the mid-block interchange, I'm not sure if you're familiar, too, that I'm familiar with roundabouts, Cambridge, the Eagle Street and Franklin.
Mhm.
If you're heading west, if you want to take Franklin to the north, so they designed the roundabout so that if you're going to the right, you don't actually have to enter the roundabout and wait for traffic. They've got it curbed and you carry on your way. So to me, part of this, the study and diversion opportunities is a similar practice there at Maltby and Brock Road to give the easier path down Maltby, which was reconstructed by, I believe, the city of Guelph. It's in great shape. It's a truck route, all that good stuff. And that would help lower our traffic count in conjunction with these other things around concession 7. So I'm at better ease that this project isn't moving forward at a fast pace. I'm sure you understand that our council has a major concern with bringing that much traffic through our community and twinning it, but there's likely to be way more discussion on it. At first, I was concerned with that presentation you provided the roads committee with the 0 to 5 year, that this thing was getting momentum and we had to act, but I'm pretty comfortable now that there's going to be plenty more discussion between all of us, and you've heard from council. So I believe I do want some discussion. So in your report that came to the roads committee last week, or whenever it was, there was a lot of talk about Center Wellington bypass. There's a lot of congestion in Center Wellington, and I understand it's a provincial road. I'm not sure where the ownership falls once it's inside Center Wellington's boundaries, because we've used it in the past. There's an example of where they have parking on both sides. It's one-way traffic each way. And for that one, there's consideration and planning going into developing a bypass. And I wonder if you can comment on why, the recommendations for Center Wellington isn't to maybe get rid of the parking and open it up to 4 lanes to facilitate the traffic, similar to what's going on in Aberfoyle, or why isn't there, like as I just mentioned, diversion planning for Aberfoyle instead of more traffic? So I'm just trying to say they're similar, and I'm wondering why they're not being considered similar.
I'll take a shot at it, Mr. Mayor. Well, the role and function of the roadways is important to consider. So when we're talking about Elora Fergus, we're talking about 3 or 4 different problem statements related to Wellington Road 7, related to Wellington Road 18, related to the provincial highway, Highway 6 through Fergus. And the original, so we look at them in isolation. We looked at Wellington Road 7 and its capacity needs and what alternatives there were to it. We looked at Wellington Road 18 and what its needs were. And then it had been identified to us that there was consideration for a bypass, and what would that bypass characteristics look like? The county was already looking at posting signage to suggest, not regulate, but advise that there was an alternative route for Highway 6 traffic that could use Wellington Road 17 and Wellington Road 7 to avoid the Fergus area. It's not regulating the change. A bypass would be looking at regulating change. And so comparing that to the Aberfoyle issue, the Aberfoyle issue is specifically a county road. There aren't competing. There are obviously Puslinch issues, local issues, and there's a county role and function. And the question is, how do they align? And also appreciating that, Wellington Road 46 is formally 6, and that the bypass, and I think I heard it earlier in this meeting, Hanlon Expressway was built as a bypass, or at least to provide an alternative route for traffic that didn't travel all the way through Guelph to connect to the 401. So, I mean, I mean, it's not that a bypass is not, shouldn't be considered or is not, not even feasible. The question is, are there alternatives? What are the alternatives to the Wellington Road 46 problem? Is Hamlin Expressway an alternative? I mean, all those types of questions are that additional area master plan, not master plan, the area traffic analysis. And to be fair to the bypass solution, that was also the conclusion coming out of that that discussion in Fergus was, all right, it's called a bypass. There are several competing functions and problems that are trying to be addressed. There should be an additional study to quantify exactly what those issues are. Because it's more than just what the volume is on the road. It's about the origin destinations. It's about the jurisdictional issues on the roadway. So we call it a bypass in Fergus because that was the problem statement that came forward. But we're still proceeding with that as if we're recommending individual improvements, and we're suggesting that a further study be done on an area-wide basis to quantify those traffic demands. And that is the same functionally as what the recommendations are coming out related to Wellington Road 46. There is a problem statement for the section of road between 34 and Maltby, which the preferred solution is to widen, but that there is an area study that needs to be done in the near future to assess the impacts of changing network and changing land use as it relates to Aberfoyle. So they're called different things, but I think functionally the recommendations are proceeding in the same path.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. And it just, as we've heard from everyone, it sounds like there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of balls in the air. And I think in the next, hopefully if it keeps to the MTO schedule, 5 years, we'll see more pieces of that puzzle come together and we'll have a better picture of traffic patterns and habits and all those good things. So, okay, I think Ms. Hoyt-Fox has a resolution. Council, do you want me to go? I don't really want to go around one more time. We've had quite a bit of discussion on this. Any councilor have anything pressing they want to discuss? No, we do have 10 point, what's the other one, 3, but we've discussed it here already. So Ms. Hoyt-Fox, you have 2 separate resolutions for those?
Yes, we do. Now we can accept them together if they're both just being received for information at this point. So we've discussed them both or however you.
I have some suggested amendments to other than just receiving it for information. I don't know if council, I'd like to see a request from our council to change the vision statement to include a social and economic benefit. I'd like to see that come from our council. And that because I'll give you the timeline. The final report was given to Roads Committee last week with Mr. Kudo and Mr. Bumstead. It'll go to county as a whole into this month, but also part of that resolution at the Roads Committee was that it be circulated to the member municipalities. I don't know if it was for comment or just, they didn't want to open it all back up, but I'd like the other member municipalities to see that we feel that's pretty significant, and hopefully we could get some support for that. So that component, and then so I'll just leave it at that. I think I'm pretty comfortable receiving it for information because, as Mr. Kudo mentioned earlier, it's in the 0 to 5, and there's no fires to put out quite yet. We have some time. Mr. Cody, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I'm happy to put that motion on the table. I've written here that I'd like to make a motion that Council of Township of Puslinch make a request to the county that the vision of the Wellington County Roads Master Action Plan be amended to include socioeconomic factors as a priority when planning for traffic and road changes, and that quality of life of residents is revised to be a standalone and important goal of the plan.
Okay, can I get a seconder for that for discussion? Councillor Spoulos, thank you. All right, Councillor Spoulos. Are you muted, sir?
I'd like to suggest a friendly amendment that has a second item that says, and that the area study proposed for Wellington 46 factor in the social economical impact on the community.
Did you capture that, Ms. White Fox?
I captured Councillor Sepulveda's. I might need Councillor Goyder to reread hers.
Sure. All right, you want me to start from the beginning?
Sure.
Sure, thank you.
Okay, that the council of the township of Puslinch make a request to the county that the vision of the Wellington County Roads Master Action Plan be amended to include socio-economic factors as a priority when planning for traffic and road changes, and that quality of life of residents is revised to be a standalone and important goal of the plan.
Then Councillor Sepulveda, what was your amendment?
Words to the effect that and that the area study for County Road 46 include factor in the social and economic impact on the area.
Comfortable with that, Councillor Goyder?
Yes.
All right. Any further discussion, Councillor Sepulveda?
No, it's fine, thank you.
Councillor Bailey?
I'm wondering if we could also amend it to include cultural environment. That was one of the, I had written down that the proposal was based on 5 components. And actually I'd been looking for more information on cultural environment component and the socioeconomic environment component. So I think that was also mentioned earlier anyway.
My only worry is if we complicate this too much, it won't have a chance of getting passed at county. So what's the component of cultural? Oh, hold on, Councillor, Mr. Kudo?
Yeah, just through Mr. Mayor, I know you're speaking to the vision and goals part of the plan. The evaluation that's been done on any of the road alternatives that are shown in the roadmap includes, I mean, Paul can confirm this, hopefully, that the socioeconomic is a factor, evaluation factor. Natural environment, many other factors. Paul, can you speak to that? I don't have those factors in front of me. If this helps with council's comfort level as to how the roadmap and evaluations were done, Paul, over to you.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. So to start with, the 7 vision statements, there are a couple of the vision statements talk about the complete streets environment and the quality of life. In terms of in applying those visions to our evaluation of the alternatives we looked at. So when we were looking at Wellington Road 46 as an improvement between County Road 34 and Maltby, we assessed it against alternatives, parallel alternatives, transportation demand management, travel demand management alternatives, and we evaluated them using transportation service criteria, natural environment criteria, socioeconomic criteria, cultural criteria, and cost. And so those all fed into the analysis or the evaluation of alternatives to the project that was identified as addressing the problem statement. The issue that I think council is taking with the Wellington Road 46 road diet, that analysis did not take into effect socioeconomic or cultural. It was strictly a demand-based assessment of what the impacts of a road diet would be to the transportation system. Outside of the road diet analysis, you're aware that the RMAP did look at the section of roadway as part of the community safety zone review. So that part does look at the cultural and social impacts or risk factors in that assessment. So there's 2 or 3 things happening at the same time, in that We're evaluating the road improvements that solve the problems identified, and we're evaluating them from a broad range of criteria. We're investigating the road diet specifically, just from a technical transportation perspective. And we were addressing the socio and cultural risks of a specific environment related to the Aberfoyle area as part of the community safety zone review.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Well, and I knew that you guys looked at it, but my initial concern with Councillor Goyda's resolution was the priority wording. But now that you just spoke, I'm actually more inclined to leave it in, because if they're looked at, but then supporting 1,500 trips from a neighboring municipality or major urban center is a priority over trumps our socioeconomic concerns, then I'm not sure I'm okay with that. And I'd like to entertain that conversation at the county council. I think that'd be a good conversation to have, and it may not make it, but it's good to hear that they were part of the discussion outside of the road diet. So thank you for that clarification. Councillor Goyda?
I do appreciate that information, and I'm glad to hear that that is the case. I do see in the vision and goals sort of that it's in there. It's just not referenced anywhere else in the report. And so I think I'm happy to leave my motion the way it is with the word priority in there, because I think that we need to draw specific attention to that component.
Okay, so did I have a seconder for that, Ms. White Fox? It was Councillor Spoulos.
I believe so. I think the original motion changed from Councillor Balmer and Councillor Sapoulis, and I believe now we have Councillor Goyda and Councillor Sapoulis with the amendment that's been made.
Okay, any further comment, Councillor Spoulos, before I go to Councillor Bailey? Oh, you're muted again, sir.
I'm fine with Councillor Goyda's suggestions.
Councillor Bailey?
Nothing further to add. No, thank you.
Councillor Balmer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Councillor Goyda and Councillor Spoulos for this. I share the vision that you're trying to express here for our community, and I must admit I should just keep quiet and support it, I guess. But at the same time, my practical side can't help but poke in and say, but county roads are for moving goods and services. This is their role, and we want them to take the traffic. And I could understand from the county roads committee perspective or a road study perspective that their priority is the movement of goods, with upper tier roads primarily being where to connect municipality to municipality or to provincial highways, as Brock Road 46 does. So I am sensitive to the needs of the county in this regard, but I must admit, I think Councillor Goyda made an excellent case for including this, and I cannot speak against that to any great degree. So I have no choice but to support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All in favor, Councillor Spoulos? Oh, timeout. I just want to include on the resolution that it be circulated to the member municipalities of Wellington County. If that was not captured. No, it's okay. All in favor, Councillor Spoulos?
In favor.
Councillor Bailey?
In favor.
Councillor Balmer?
In favor.
Councillor Goyda?
In favor.
That's carried. Thank you, Mr. Kudo. Thank you, Mr. Bumstead. Appreciate your time. Ms. White Fox, I believe you have a resolution for 10.3.
Yes, so the council received correspondence item 10.3 regarding the Wellington Road Master Action Plan final report presentation from the Roads Committee meeting for information.
Okay, mover for that, please. Councillor Spoulos, seconded by Councillor Goida. All in favor? Councillor Spoulos,
In favor.
Councillor Bailey,
Favor.
Councillor Bummer,
In favor.
Councillor Goida.
In favor.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. I appreciate your patience with us.
Thank you very much. Over.
I need a 2-minute break, 5-minute break. Sorry. We can reconvene at 1:15, please. All right, welcome back from our brief break. We'll do a quick roll call. Councillor Spoulos.
Present.
Councillor Bailey.
Present.
Councillor Bummer.
Here.
Councillor Goida.
Present.
Council reports. Well, most of it we spoke about just in the previous 2 items, but Wellington County Roads Department or Roads Committee had a report from Burnside, which was added last minute to the agenda. And this was due to a resolution from the Roads Committee to report back on the implementation of community safety zones. Because through the roadmap, they've built this huge flow chart of how things will be implemented. And the committee wanted to see, you know, how that would work in the real world. So the county put it together and Burnside, it came back, and I believe there's 16 community safety zones going to be, I say going to be implemented across the county. It has to go through county council as a whole at the end of the month. And I think this is great news for Aberfoyle. They've also, along with the work that Mr. Schwendinger has been doing with their staff for improvements at the crosswalk, everything's coming together. The sidewalk plows, we're really building that community down there. And I did have some conversations with other members of county council that, so what was it? There was 16, I believe 10 met the criteria and 5 were 1 point short in the grading schedule. So they included, so the point count was 18, Aberfoyle made 18, but there was 5 or 6 that only had 17 points, but the county decided to include them anyways. So there was some discussion that maybe the criteria to get a community safety zone may be set a little too high. But we all feel that, you know, it's the first implementation. Let's get them put in the community, see how they work. And then, you know, my goal for as a representative up there at the county is to advocate for the speed enforcement cameras. And the major component of that was a community safety zone. So we've now put, by the end of the month, will be put in place, other than they have to build the bylaw and that has to be approved. But I feel that won't take too long. So that's wonderful news for Aberfoyle. It's wonderful news for our school children that are walking across that street. And as we just heard, diversion, what's a great way to make people go around Aberfoyle is make them drive 50. They can go to the Hanlon and drive 80 or whatever the speed limit is over there. So I'm pretty excited about it. There's been a lot of work with multiple members of the council, and we support county, that is, and with your support here. It's nice to see something come to fruition that's going to have a real impact on our community. So if you have any questions for me around the community safety zone, I'll take them in that report, but other than that, no, good. Councilor Spoulos?
Any discussion on Lake Road?
No. Yeah. You know what, in that report, John, I'd have to look it up. They did do an analysis on that. They likely would have done the analysis on it because any county roads that went through a hamlet or a settlement area, which I feel Lake Road met the criteria. They did the analysis, but its point totals would have been fairly low. Should be in that report somewhere. But in saying that, I've been verbally told that the reconstruction of Lake Road may be one of the first county roads to have mitigation incorporated into the design. They're going to maybe narrow it down to try to slow people down. So there's other opportunities. Now, until that's presented as an actual, you know, draft drawing, but I'm almost certain the county is committed to that and for that reconstruction. And they did the culvert just last year, so that'll be coming soon. But that leads into where I said, initially it was the criteria was near school, you know, these other high risk areas. I know that the current county council, there's an appetite to expand that once we get them into place and they and we can prove that they're working.
Okay, so you're saying that we shouldn't be asking county roads to come back and discuss Lake Road until after we get through this initial phase of community zones.
That would be my suggestion. I know another mayor had the same. He has some hotspot areas that he's concerned about that didn't quite fit the mold. But I mean, yeah, I would wait till we get these in and then see how they operate, and then especially the reconstruction coming soon for Lake Road. Not to say that because it's reconstructed, it can't be a community safety zone, but you know, we're going to see some improvement down in that area of the township as well.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Anything else? Okay, any council reports from members of council? Councilor Bulmer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple updates from the Heritage Committee, some interesting discussions I thought council should be aware of. Number one, the Heritage Committee over the last, I guess, year and a half, we've started receiving some newsletters from some heritage organizations, and many of the members comment on how valuable that has been to them, now being members of these heritage organizations. And I said I'd pass that back on to council, you know, because that's part of the budget discussions. I don't know if you recall, there was in our budget package, there was a list of organizations that the municipality is members of, and the Heritage Committee certainly appreciates the investment that's been made in helping them to learn more about their jobs. And the other piece was one of the discussions that we had at the Heritage Committee related to an article that appeared in one of the North American heritage newsletters, and it was submitted by one of our committee members. Mary Tivey had submitted an article regarding the numerous cemeteries here in the township, especially the older ones, or in particular the older ones. And it was really nice to read an article about our community in a newsletter that goes US and Canada. So obviously they felt it was of merit, and it was included in their publication. So, which included, of course, the Howitt Memorial Cemetery, which was on our agenda today. So very timely. Thank you.
Excellent, Councilor Bulmer. Thank you. Any further? Councilor Bailey?
Yeah, I just wanted to update everyone. Our Safe Communities Committee is hoping to launch a Facebook type presence, and with that, we're going to be launching, I think I mentioned in the past, a Goose Chase app activity. So what it is a virtual activity to engage people in winter safety, and February is heart health. So some of the activities are going to be geared around those two topics. And it's just a friendly, competitive thing all ages can do. It requires maybe an activity, and then you would digitally take a picture of what you've completed or what you're doing if you're wearing a helmet, say skating. And then you would get points based on the activity that you've performed. And then at the end, there'll be a winner. And someone has kindly donated a Union Market gift card actually for the for the winner. So I thought that was a good match. Anyway, so stay tuned, and if you see it, please help forward it on.
If you need additional gifts, I would be willing to provide, you know, some gift cards from somewhere. So just let me know.
Wonderful. Take you up on that. Thank you.
Any further updates? I wanted to go back to me again. I just want to mention our rink. I noticed that our MPP tweeted out that he was at the Murph enjoying a free skate, and I want to commend staff for working within the public health regulations, putting up with some difficulties initially. I hope that you know, those have kind of weaned off, and just truly appreciate that being open to our community. And I do understand that it is used by a lot of our neighboring municipalities, but one thing I do notice when I'm there is that it's a lot of kids and the rentals are kids. So they have an opportunity to get out and, within the public health guidelines, practice hockey, skate. They're from mostly, I say almost all of them are compliant, especially now. Initially, there was some confusion coming from other areas on whether you needed a mask on the ice, but from what I've seen, people are compliant, staff are awesome, the ice is in great shape. So Mr. Fowler and your staff truly appreciate having that again, because we had it open last year just for skating. The amount of times I was a little message, oh, thank you so much, I was able to go out for a skate. That's what it's about. So thank you, we really appreciate it. Other than that, I'll stop babbling. Miss White Fox, do you have a resolution?
Council received the mayor's and council member updates for information.
All right, you're gonna move her for that, please. Councillor Bailey, Councillor Goyda second. Awesome, all in favor, Councillor Spoulis,
In favor.
Councillor Bailey,
Favor?
Councillor Balmer,
In favor.
and Councillor Goyda.
In favor.
Awesome. Ms. White Fox, resolution for bylaws.
That the following bylaws be taken as read 3 times and finally passed in open council. Bylaw 2022-003 being a bylaw to provide for the levy and collection of the 2022 interim tax levy. And bylaw 2022-004 being a bylaw to authorize the execution of the agreement of purchase and sale for Howard Memorial Cemetery, located at the intersection of Laird Road and Side Road 10 in the township of Puslinch, and the transfer of lands from the Western Ontario Waterways Regional Council to the township of Puslinch with regards to the Howard Memorial Cemetery.
Can I get a mover for that, please? Councillor
move.
Lewis, oh, no, moved by Councillor Balmer, seconded by Councillor Sapoulis. All in favor, Councillor Sapoulis,
In favor.
Councillor Bailey,
Favor?
Councillor Balmer,
In favor.
and Councillor Goyda.
In favor.
Closed session, none. Business arising from the session we didn't have. Any notice of motion? New business. Nothing. Announcements? No. Affirmatory bylaw.
That the following bylaw be taken as read 3 times and finally passed in open council. Bylaw 2022-005 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council for the corporation of the township of Puslinch at its meeting held on the 19th day of January 2022.
Get a mover for that, please. Councillor Goyda?
Yep.
Seconded by Councillor Spoulis. All in favor, Councillor Spoulis,
In favor.
Councillor Bailey. I saw you say it, but I didn't hear it. Councillor Balmer,
In favor.
Councillor Goyda,
In favor.
and adjournment, Ms. White Fox.
The council hereby adjourns at 1:28 p.m.
Get a mover, please.
In favor.
Councillor Bailey, seconded by Councillor Sapoulis. All in favor, Councillor Sapoulis,
In favor.
Councillor Bailey,
Favor?
Councillor Balmer,
In favor.
Councillor Goyda.
In favor.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time.
Bye,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.